What's up, guys? So, welcome to the next live edition of the podcast. We're coming to you live, from the recording room. So, we'll give it a minute for people to jump in. As we do that, we'll give a big thanks to our sponsors that, again, help support the podcast and make the thing possible. So you guys get to listen to us on Mondays or sometimes on these live podcasts. So again, we'll thank our sponsors, and then we'll jump right into it. We'll have a show today for you. You know, some a basic sort of idea to share with you, as always, to give you something to chew on for your day and for your time with us. And then also we'll do some Q&A with you guys towards the end, or just we'll just talk. We'll just chat. We don't have to put anything specific on it. We'll just chat about stuff. But a big thanks to our sponsor. One of our main sponsors on the podcast is obviously Charlotte's Web. I'm a big fan of their stuff. I recently, I don't know what it was. Have you ever struggled with sleep?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know what was going on for 2 weeks, bro. It was off and on. I would sleep really well one night, and the next night I would be up, literally just awake. I don't know what it is. Couldn't sleep. I would turn on audiobooks. I would do my deep breathing, all the normal stuff that normally puts me right out, and it wasn't working. So remember that little sleep spray?
Yeah.
I tried that stuff out. Holy moly.
It's good.
I combined a sleep spray with a sleep gummy. So
the chewy concoction.
Yeah, right. So you're getting CBD, melatonin, skullcap, and then valerian root, and dead to the world, bro. Just out.
That's great, man.
It was great.
I know you were struggling with it, so I'm glad you got to sleep a little bit.
Oh, it's awful, bro. It's so weird because I always get good sleep. And so for me not to get good sleep, it drives me nuts, because I'm normally really sharp and my days are pretty tight, right? So my days are usually planned out, and so I've got a very tight schedule, and that tight schedule of productivity generally depends upon the fact that I had a good 7 to 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
Getting 1 to 2 hours of sleep, bro. I mean, I'm functionally stupid just all day long.
You're just definitely not sharp.
No, not at all. And so again, I was happy to combine those two things. So I used the sleep gummies and the sleep spray that they just came out with, which has CBD along with skullcap and valerian root. So those put me down. It was like a tranquilizer.
I mean, I even I was binge watching some TV, which I don't do, but we were staying up a little later and just not getting, even throwing off my sleep time.
Oh yeah,
going to bed later and getting up even a little later kind of messed with me. I was getting about the same amount of sleep, maybe a little less, but for me, I was like, oh man, I just felt just off a little bit. So definitely the sleep is so important, and I feel it definitely when I train. I'm already kind of from working, I feel a little tired. And then when I go in, if my sleep's been off also, it kind of messes with me as well.
Yeah. So if you guys want to check out some of their products, like their sleep gummies or their sleep spray that they just came out with, and if it's something to see if it helps you out with your sleep, you can check out their products at charlottesweb.com/Jiu-Jitsu.
And then we just wrapped up the
Epic Roll special limited edition. We'll be doing another batch in the future, probably, I imagine, towards the summer this year. I'm excited to get those out, and I'm going to try to include, for those of you that did order, I'm going to try to include a little something extra. I didn't say that I was going to, but I always, anytime someone buys stuff from me, typically, especially those kind of big limited edition, I tend to give you stuff you don't expect. A couple times I sent it like printed newsletters, and sometimes you'll get a course that on my website or whatever. So I just add some extra stuff to it just as a thank you to it. So again, but if you guys want to check out any of Matt's stuff, you can go to his website. While the Jiu-Jitsu limited stuff is gone, you can go to his website. You can check out some of his other products, like his t-shirts, which you'll see them a lot in my episodes on the channel. You can also check out some of his non-Velcro shorts, which I'm a big fan of. And those are at epicrollbjj.com, and use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu at checkout. And then also, guys, if you want to, we did one right before this podcast. We did a green rune episode. This is where we don't do these lives very often, so this is on the Patreon. If you want to check it out, we have tons of back-end content from the podcast for several years now, and we've started doing a live show on the days we do our podcast, which again, you can join us there once a month for one of those. And then also big thanks to Manscaped. Manscaped is the premier grooming products for men. I don't know what to say anymore. The world's
people that need it, people that are hairy.
Yeah, people that are hairy. We'll say it like that. If you're a guy and you're hairy and you want a top-notch trimmer, razor, grooming products, whatever you need, you can get it at Manscaped by going to manscaped.com. You promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20. You get 20% off the order, and you get free shipping. It's a good deal.
One of our best blooper reels was
you and your trimmer.
Yeah, me and the trimmer fiasco. So
yeah,
when's that coming out?
Works great as a flashlight. Oh, you can upload that. Like you can turn that thing on tomorrow.
What? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So tomorrow, if you guys want to check out the Jiu-Jitsu podcast channel, he's going to upload a blooper reel from the podcast. You guys can check that out. It's basically me laughing hysterically for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, and created a new sport, I think, in that.
Yeah, I'm going to be a world champion.
I'm
going to be a champion at it. World champion.
I want to find out
world champion.
What the new
didn't happen in Jiu-Jitsu.
You will see if somebody's going to challenge you in your escapade.
And last but not least, guys, if you want to join my email list, get 2 free ebooks, you can do that by going to jujitsu.net/join. I give away a game plan guide, which will show you how to use, basically make a game plan. I show you mine that I use for competitions, which hasn't changed too much over the last years. There's a few things added to it, but the core of it is still there. And you can also get a guide on drilling and how to drill techniques in your gym, even if you don't have time to do open mats and everything like that. And then you get access to my daily emails, which you can unsubscribe from at any time. And guys, with that said, let's jump into today's podcast. So we're here in the new year. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, we got a couple questions. Thank you guys. We'll get to those towards the end. D100, thank you for the donation.
Oh, they did a donation one.
Yeah, but we'll definitely get to you.
Okay, yeah.
We'll definitely get to you once we kind of get through the podcast. We'll get that answer.
Yeah, so we're gonna go over a little something, and then afterwards you can jump in. It's not going to be a terribly long one, but it's just something I was thinking about because we're getting into January now, and obviously goals are going on. It's like a perfect time, right? It's a new year, and therefore you can set these new goals. And there's nothing wrong with it. I do it. For people who poo-poo, that's what I was trying to go with, on goals made at the New Year's. One of my good friends, Brandon McGaffron, started doing jiu-jitsu because of a New Year's goal.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's not to say that they're stupid. Again, it becomes cliche, but it doesn't mean that it's not effective. Whatever you need to sort of spur yourself on is fine. Whether that you need to beat on a certain month or you need to start on Monday instead of like Wednesday to make sure it's the beginning of the week to get going, whatever you need to do. But there is something you got to be careful about when it comes to goals. At least this is in my mind. I think this is the reason why things like blue belt blues happens. And it's one of these things where I dealt with this a little bit this past year, which is you have to be careful. And again, I knew what was going on, so it didn't really bother me too much. But a lot of people, when they set goals for themselves, they get wrapped up into those goals. And when you have a goal that's meaningful to you, it's a really powerful thing because it'll get you up in the morning. It'll keep you up at late at night. It'll get you to train harder. It'll get you to work harder. It'll get you to be more thoughtful about everything you're doing. It's easier to be more disciplined if you have a worthwhile goal. This is why a lot of people who do jiu-jitsu, they have a terrible time keeping their diet together when they're not training or when they're not working towards something. And then when they're working towards something, it's very easy. But what happens when that goal goes away? Right? That can be a problem. So let's say, for instance, what happens when you reach that goal?
Yeah.
And this is the thing, because a lot of times when we reach goals, it's like a seemingly beautiful and sad thing at the same time, because you've essentially done something that you wanted to do, which is a great thing. But at the same time, you've now reached the destination.
Yeah.
So where do we go now? And that a lot of times becomes a place for people where you now have, you can think of it as the wave. And this is sort of the natural rhythm of it. You think of a wave coming up, it builds up to a peak, and then it crashes onto the shore, and then it pulls back. And usually after your goals have been hit, a lot of times there's this, yes, I got it, followed by a, okay, what now? And you see this a lot of times in jiu-jitsu where people who, it's mainly the blue belt, because after the blue belt, you realize that promotions aren't that big of a deal. Like you get them, but nothing changes. But you get the blue belt and you're like, what now? Oh, you were expecting something magical because you came in and you had no clue what you're doing, and blue belt seemed really good at the time. And now you became a blue belt. You are one of those people that's really good. And now you realize that there's nothing special about it. I remember when I got into business not myself, but like when I went into, I guess, business for myself, whatever. I don't even know how to word it. I hate using the word like entrepreneurial thing because it's like so overused. Great. Again, it's kind of like the New Year's resolution thing. It is what it is, but like the thing is like so many people who like, they just, they're not doing anything. They just like pop up like day one. I'm an entrepreneur. Like, are you? What have you done? So it's like, I don't like using the word all the time, but being in business for myself, whatever. I remember having a dollar amount set. I remember me and my old business partner, we talked about like, what would be, he asked me, he's like, what would be the amount of money that you would think would just be unreal to have as a jiu-jitsu teacher? And I remember looking up like the medium salary of like a lawyer. I was like, well, lawyers make good money, right? I was like, so I was like, what at the time? I was like, what did they make? I was like, I looked up like the middle salary, not the highest, not the lowest, the middle. I was like, that. I was like, if I make that, then everything will just be great. And then I remember like blowing past that. You're like, okay, what now? Like, okay, there's supposed to be something special about it, but there wasn't.
What'd you do? What was your what now? What'd you do in that?
Well,
happen?
We'll talk about that in a second.
Ooh.
And then I remember getting into situations where, like, let's say, for instance, competitions. I remember having certain competitions that were big deals to me. And I remember getting them and like, okay, what now? You know? And even this year, I remember like, you know, Jess and I, we'd been looking for quite a while, almost 2 years for a place, for a house. Granted, we didn't get anything massive. We were very particular about what we wanted. We wanted a few things and we didn't want to pay a lot of money for it, you know, because both of us, like, you know, my thing is like, what I could afford and what I actually want to pay is two different things. Like, I don't want to be house poor, you know, and like for, you know, people like who are coming up, like, I don't want a big hole in my bucket, just sucking the money out of me for something that, you know, I don't necessarily need. Right. You know, I remember seeing some of these, like we went and looked at some houses that were at the upper end of our budget. And I remember we didn't even really like them. They were just so massive. It's like, what do I need this for? Like, what am I going to do in here? You know, it's like, we would just get lost from each other, you know, like, I mean, it's just like, it's just way too big. And we wanted more land than we did the house. And then we found the spot where we got our property now and everything else. It's great. But I remember it's like that. Then it was kind of like, okay, I need a new mission for us, you know, because now we've got the house, we've got the horse, because that's what you wanted. And we've got this little farm going. All right, what's the next mission, you know? And so then you have to, like, there's two things about it. One, and the reason why I bring this up is because I was talking to, I got a question from someone on Instagram recently, and this comes up a lot, where they had a big goal, they hit the goal, and then now they're moving through life and they feel almost aimless because they don't have a goal. And that goal, lacking a goal, can be such a bother thing, especially if you're a person that's like wants to get after it. It can almost feel like something's wrong, you know? And so in that sense, you know, like I was telling them, first thing you do after you hit that goal is ride it out for a while, because it's natural. It's like the wave. It built up to a peak. It has to retract back a little bit. It can't keep going forever. And just like you can't keep going forever, because it's almost like it's like my buddy Joe. He was in the military, and I remember he was telling me about seeing a machine gun, like a automatic belt-fed weapon, being fired so long without a break that the barrel began to be turned red and sort of bend.
Yeah, warp from the heat.
Yeah, and you know, they can just take the barrel and change it, and boom, you got an operational weapon, right? Take a little bit of a break, change it. We don't really work that way. You know, we burn ourselves out and can go bad. So you have to take a break sometimes, because you don't want to burn out completely. You know, it's like that. It's like the gun. Like, you have to back off the trigger a little bit. And for us, like, when we keep charging forward and we don't give it a break, bad things happen. In training, a lot of times you can see this, where people that have been training for a long time have the uncanny ability to power through things with willpower. Not always a good thing. Leads to a lot of times to injuries. And so I bring this up just so that as all you guys are just getting ready to do your goals, you're getting after it. We're in the first sort of week of the new year. Make sure that you make some room that and understand that once you get the goals, you'll then have to, like, sort of just embrace this period of kind of going backwards for a little bit, followed by taking a little bit of time to figure out what you want. And that might take months. That could take time, you know, because you don't know. Sometimes you got to spend time with yourself to just figure out what it is that you actually want. And then you find your new goal and go forward. But there's a danger in putting so much emphasis on that goal, and understanding it, when you're achieving these goals, it really doesn't. It's not the goal that really matters. It's who you're turning yourself into that's important. If you get the blue belt, it's not the damn blue belt. It's you developing the skills to be a blue belt. If me making a certain dollar amount, it wasn't about me making the money. It was about me developing a person who could then make that money, and if taken away, could do it again, because I have the skills to do so. Right. And that's what matters. You know, it's like, for you, it's not about the PhD that you have, or what
DPT.
DBT. Sorry. I don't know. I'm
not PhDs for like teachers.
Teachers, right?
Yeah.
So not a PhD, doctorate.
Yeah.
The doctorate that you have, it's about you having the skills to do what that is necessary, right? To earn that, because that's what really matters.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just the thing to keep in mind, because again, you see people all the time that like do big stuff and then they drop off.
Yeah.
You know, and
I think like what you're hinting at from what I'm getting from this is that it's the process and the acquisition, the skill acquisition, the process of getting those skills, or even, you know, through acquisition of certain skills, or the process of learning a skill of some sort, you will ultimately achieve a goal or not. Maybe your skills are not up to par and you don't achieve that goal, or so I think like we do.
And don't get wrapped up into it. Don't get too wrapped up into it, because I mean, have them and let them push you forward, but also know that when you get there, nothing's going to essentially change that much. There'll be some changes, but generally, unless something happens in an instant, when we're talking about developing yourself, like becoming, more skillful, getting in better shape, whatever it is that you're doing, those things happen so gradually that by the time they arrive, you don't even realize they've arrived. I remember losing weight. I remember losing, about 40 pounds ish, whatever it was, when I was a teenager. It happened so gradually that like by the time I'd eventually lost weight, I remember going back to school the next year, people looked at me like, "Oh my God, you've lost so much weight." And I still couldn't see it. Like when I looked at myself, I was like, I still look the same way as I always did, don't I? I can't see it. One good thing, if you are going on a weight loss thing, take pictures every week. Like I take a picture every week of myself. Right now I'm on my weight cut, and I can see the changes from looking at those pictures. Very helpful. Just because sometimes you don't realize, right? You don't have that little snapshot.
Yeah, you have contrast through time.
Yeah, and I do the same thing with a lot of times with like different things I'm doing in business. Like I'll take little snapshots of certain numbers and metrics like along the way, so like I can go back and look at them and be like, for instance, I remember listening to YouTuber type people talk about this. Like someday you're going to post a video and you're going to be like, oh, there's not that many views. But then it's like, go back and look at what you got back in the day. And it's, because I have a snapshot of my very first big video that I ever posted, and I had 10,000 views in like 24 hours. It was massively,
that's awesome.
It was huge for me. And then like now it's like, that's kind of a moderately okay video, like whatever, it's okay, and like I look back and go, oh, okay, that's neat, like it just to kind of have that stuff, or even just like we have different pictures of different stuff that Jess and I have done. So again, it's nice to have reminders of where you came from to realize how far you actually have gone. Even like, if you train, if you might have some videos of yourself rolling as like a white belt, when you get the blue belt, you might be like, man, this just seems like so empty, or man, it's just a blue belt, whatever. But then you go back and watch videos of yourself rolling. I used to have like jiu-jitsu competition videos. I go back and watch those. Like, God, I sucked. I remember watching my very first competition, and I remember like I got by because I was aggressive. I remember watching my feet as a white belt. I was going for a key lock, and my feet were like flopping all over the place. My control was terrible. And then I remember looking back at it, just thinking, God bless, I'm awful, or I was awful. I've come a long way since then.
Sure.
And so it's helpful to have that contrast.
Yeah. What about like, when do you think, so we talk about achieving goals. What about if you don't reach that goal? When do you, I think for me, making smaller goals, having an ultimate goal and having smaller goals, like mini goals to reach up to that point. But when would you kind of say, all right, this maybe goal is just too far for me to get to? And when would you modify it, or if you would modify it?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think it depends on you, right? I mean, because you got to think about, why did you not hit the goal? Did you hit the goal because you weren't staying focused and you weren't doing the work that needed to be done? Or is the goal maybe out of reach right now and it just isn't a good one? Or maybe you set a goal that was way too high for you currently. Because I don't know about you, like when you set goals, I set goals, I have like my big crazy goals that like I put, and they're like, I don't even know if they're going to happen, but I put them out there just to put them out in like put them out in the universe.
Yeah.
But then I have the ones that are more realistic, and the ones that like, I know I can hit these, and then I kind of work my way up. And so there's there's long-term, short-term, and then there's my crazy goals that like I have in the future in my head somewhere that I don't know if they're ever going to happen, but I have them out there.
You just put them out every year.
Yeah. Well, I do
until you,
I do it every quarter. So like for me, like I have a black journal. And that's my black journal. And I write in it like pretty much periodically every couple months. And I'll take a look at it. And I have goals in there, and they're quarterly goals. So here's what I want to do this quarter. Here's what I want to do next quarter. Here's what I want to do next quarter. And, just kind of checking in with it, opposed to just writing them and then forgetting about them, or just having one set of goals. It's like, because sometimes like, I have my quarterly goals, and then in the middle of that quarter, I'm like, oh, I need to shift because there's an opportunity over here. And I just got to shift. I got to change. And so some of those goals that were there, they're no longer a focus, and I move this way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I have a little journal that I specifically have just for whatever goals I'm after. And then I have a working like little binder that I just use, like a little paper. I have to have ink and paper. I can't do phone stuff. Like, it's just too out of sight, out of mind. I've learned this over time. Like, I have to have physical things for me to touch and mess around with. If it's something that's like in a digital notebook somewhere, forget about it.
You won't see it.
It's gone. It's like, it's in a digital notebook. Then it's like, and then also it's fighting. If I'm going to open up my phone or my computer, then it's fighting with everything else that could possibly get in the way. Like ding, 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 ding. Here's a notification, or here's something I can do in the computer, or whatever. What was I trying to look at again? Like, whereas if it's on my desk, if it's there in front of me, it's a tangible piece of paper looking at me, and then I write with it. And there's also something about the tactileness of actually moving pen through. Like, even when I read books versus reading them digitally, I feel like I retain more of the information from reading the book on a piece of paper and taking notes and highlighting stuff along the way, opposed to just reading it in a digital form and that kind of thing.
I think it's more, to me, it's more satisfying to like read and like read a book, or like turn the page, kind of almost like, I don't know if that makes sense, but like writing, typing doesn't quite give me the same feedback, I guess. So so I will kind of write in if I'm writing ideas, I'll use an iPad, and that way I can kind of move ideas around. That's why I like that. But because I can write, I want to add that in, so I don't want to rewrite everything, so I can slide stuff down, and it helps me kind of game plan a little bit, like writing on an iPad does. But I do have a journal that I keep kind of goals in, and there's something I don't know, I enjoy kind of the act of writing. And I think I retain more when I
write every day. Like, I write like in a journal, like at least every day.
Yeah.
Like, I've got like all kinds of journals. I got like my daily journal.
Yeah.
There was a book I read years ago. I think it was called like Morning Pages or whatever, Artist Journey or Artist Way. It was by a woman. She was an artist, and she had this idea. The whole book is about this one idea. And the idea basically is write in a journal once a day and write one page, just one page.
I try to do that. Yeah.
It's hard.
Sometimes
it's hard. What's hard to be consistent? Like, do something that's the thing. That's the trick. See, this is why, like, when people think about imposter syndrome too, like when you hit big goals and you're like, whoa, I think one of the biggest problems is because you understand what you did wasn't anything special, yet it is special, right? It's like the secret that isn't a secret, right? Like, you're an imposter because you know that you didn't have something special about you that made you this way. Like, what made you this way was that you got up and you showed up day in, day out, and you did this damn thing. Now, that in itself it's so mundane. It goes against everything. When we think of these people that end up being so, like, they're just naturally intelligent. They just have this natural gift, this thing, it's such a fallacy, of course. It's not true. It's very often not the case at all. It's a lot of times we just haven't seen that side. And these people were grinding away for years and years and years, and we never saw that part of them. I mean, granted, there are people that have natural inclinations to be better gifted at certain activities and have higher IQs, things of that nature. But for the most part, when we see someone that's successful, there's this whole like deep underbelly of hard work that they've been putting forward for years. We don't see it. We just see the successful part. But then there's, for us, like when we do something in our lives where we feel pretty accomplished, but at the same time, we're like, who am I to wear this black belt? Because that stuff goes through people's heads. Like, I've had that message has been sent to me so many times about the black belt. Who am I to have this black belt? Or like, I remember one time, like, talking to a guy about business and like for the gym. And I remember, like, I was like, who am I to talk about this stuff? But then I'm talking with him and I'm like running circles around him. I'm like, oh, I got to slow down. I've learned a few things over the last 12 years. It's like, I forget. Because there's nothing that I've done is special. It's just that I kept training and doing things consistently for a long period of time. That's the special part about it. It's the hardest thing to do. So writing one page a day it's a special thing because you're consistent about it. But there's an interesting thing that happens, and this is something why I always tell people to journal, is you get really good at having a conversation with yourself.
Right.
And the value in doing that is you get in tune with who you are and what you want, opposed to what's being thrown upon you. You know, so for instance, like if you just accomplished a big goal, what else do you want? Well, you need to do some deep soul searching and figure out what you want. And if you've never really done that before, that can be a really tough exercise to like actually sit down with yourself and figure out what do I want. It's so much easier to like let the world tell you what you're supposed to want, what you're supposed to do, what you're supposed to, right? It's a hard thing to like choose a direction for yourself. It's why it's like being in business for yourself, being a small business owner, incredibly hard. It's easier you can have the false sense of security that a company is going to take care of you. Meanwhile, they'll cut your ass as soon as they lose some money, but you don't have to make that decision. It's not on you. It's on someone else to actually put it in your court where you're like, I'm going to actively make a decision for myself. That's a difficult thing to do, you know, and it's a difficult way to even live your life. It's easier just to be kind of like, you know, tune out. Well, the speaking box told me I'm supposed to do this or whatever. And so I think journaling is an important thing. And if you can do it daily, it doesn't have to be long. It could be like a little small journal. Just write down a page, and there's no idea as to what you're supposed to write. You just write whatever's on your mind and you let it flow. And as you do that more and more, it's a practice. You get really good with all of a sudden things start popping up, and you don't know why they popped up. You don't know why these ideas came to you. It's like just something speaking to you through the subconscious, and all of a sudden, boom, that's kind of an interesting idea.
Yeah.
And most of my biggest decisions in my life, most of my best decisions in my life have happened from those kinds of things. Not from I'm going to be thoughtful. It's like it starts off as, oh, this is a good idea.
Just something pops out.
And then all of a sudden it grows. But again, it's being in tune with yourself.
Yeah, I think you talk about it's like having a conversation with yourself in a way. For me, journaling is helpful just because, I mean, if I'm a person that ruminates, and we talk about this all the time, I ruminate stuff.
Got to get it out.
I got to get it out. And it's the way I can get it out. And sometimes, you know, I'll talk to my wife about it and that kind of thing. And she's like, all right, well, you know, here's some ideas, but like, still doesn't help. And I have to get it out, and having that putting it out on paper, like you're like, it's just a different form of expression. And I'd usually feel better, or I figure out what my hang up is.
Yeah.
Like, what's my hang up with this thing? Why am I struggling? Why am I constantly beating myself up around this idea or this thing that happened? Right. Why did it happen? What's the reason for it? For me, it's been therapeutic, because I'm sometimes a head case, and I'm always like in my head, and I'm, you know, it's like we make this the fear of what people think and what people like, our fears are kind of so much bigger than like actually what they are.
Oh yeah.
Like, we make these like, oh, my life's going to end and all this stuff's going to be horrible if this thing happens. But in all reality, it's a very small little hiccup.
Yeah. We suffer more in our imaginations than we do in actual real life.
Yeah. Like, we fear what people are going to think of us,
everything,
or what have you.
I mean, bro, everything. Everything. We suffer more in our imaginations than we do anywhere else.
I agree.
I mean, because like, think about, like, now granted, there are bad things that happen,
of course,
you know, but you think about like you think about the amount of times that you were afraid of something and you were fearful of something, and the way you built it up versus the amount of times that actually came true. So like, even if, let's say you died of a particular disease and you got nervous about dying, okay, well, that was one time. How many other times in your life did you get freaked out about something and it ended up being nothing? You know, now it's
more often than not.
Right. And again, it's a survival mechanism to try to keep us alive, right? It's our body trying to keep ourselves alive from not doing stupid stuff. But again, this is where like humans are interesting, because we're emotional creatures, but we understand, in today, we understand the value of logic. Right. We understand that thinking about things in a logical situation is very helpful. But then when our emotions get to us, we do dumb stuff. We make dumb decisions. We say dumb things. You know, we talked about this before the podcast. You look at the last 2 years, look at the way that like logic was tossed to the side for just pure and utter emotion. Right. It's madness. You know, you're like, well, and by some people who say that they were being logical about the decision, you weren't being logical at all. You're being completely torn by emotion. And we do that on ourselves. I think that like when you talk about journaling for you, like just the same thing, it allows you to sort of think things out a little bit and like take a step away from the emotion for a moment and just like look at it. I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
This is so ridiculous.
Yeah. You get to almost like kind of step outside like of yourself. You see yourself in the situation, you step outside and kind of, you know, a book that was really, really helpful for me. One of the books that really spoke to me was Stillness is the Key. Ryan Holiday.
Yeah.
He does a lot of stoicism and that kind of stuff. And that was just about, like you said, taking a step back, having a moment of like stillness to kind of, assess and figure out like where you are, where you're going, that kind of thing. So for me, that's, if I'm ever like emotionally like kind of, worked up, I have to back off, and I have to like try to figure out like rationally what's going on.
Well, sometimes figuring out actually what's going on is kind of weird. Like trying to figure out what the root is.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not really apparent.
It's not, but yeah, like if you're having those, I think there is some stillness in journaling, which allows you
to be. So even think about this, like, so when you write versus type, you have to you can't write as fast as you can type.
True.
Right? Like otherwise it's going to be really ugly. Like, I mean, it's going to be like terrible chicken scratch. You actually have to think about what you're writing, and you can't delete it. Right. So you can't just start scribbling letters down, because you're not going to get white out on your journal. Right. It's not that serious. So you have to slowly think about your words. So it's much more of a conscious process. Whereas I feel like with typing, you can just go, like typing for me is good for some things because I can get things out fast, and it can literally keep up with my brain. My typing, my brain can keep up with each other. Whereas writing, I have to slow down because my brain cannot, like when I'm in that state, I can't keep up with my writing can't keep up. So I have to slow my thoughts down. But, yeah.
Well, what do you have? Do you have any goals maybe you want to share? Like that, maybe something that you want to accomplish? What's a goal for you?
Maybe stuff that maybe in that sort of involves you guys. We're going to be doing, I want to do 3 camps this year at the gym. So we did one last year. We did our sort of like preliminary one, our tester, and it went really well. We had people come out to my gym. We trained for 3 days together. Friday, Saturday, it's about 3 days together. We spent time at my house. We did a breathing workshop, a little bit of meditation there, and then we did we had smoothies on my back patio, which I thought was cool. I mean, I was like, if you guys liked me, I was like, that had to be. I mean, for me, I was like, that would have been cool. If like I really was into this person that I met, like from YouTube or whatever, I'm like, this would be the coolest thing to do. Just hang out with, whatever.
Sure, absolutely.
And we had a party at the gym, or cookout at the gym and stuff. So we're going to be running about 3 of those. That's one that I think is going to be a lot of fun. And I'm going to try to see if I can give away a free spot to each one for each camp. Other than that, a lot of them are like very like specific to me. There's not necessarily like, goals that I think anybody may find interesting. Like one of them is like Jess and I want to get another horse.
Okay.
And we need to build a couple little things around the yard so we can train with them and stuff like that, to do trail rides.
Yeah.
So,
that's cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I'm going to be a midlife cowboy.
Yeah.
But, so there's
in the city.
So there's a few things, but again, it's like normal stuff. It's not like crazy, like stuff. And I don't know what people think is interesting, whatever. As far as goals go, I don't know what people think is like,
it's whatever you think is interesting.
Yeah. Well, I know, but I'm saying like, I don't know what you would mention to people. So, oh, this is what I'm after. Like, I don't know.
Well, like, a lot of times it's financial goals or even like physical.
Well, I mean, I have financial goals.
Well, sure. Yeah.
But it's
always like something you want to share with everyone.
Yeah. It's not like but that's my business. It's like my financial goal. I don't really like talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Like I enjoy like for me is just to continue. I don't know. Being consistent with training. That's kind of like not even a goal. That's something
so with training. So, I want to be consistent. Right now I'm on a weight cut, which probably is going to be coming to an end in the next week or two. Because I'm down about 7-8 pounds, and I don't want to get too lean. I don't want to get like last year, man, I've got like super light, and like none of my pants fit anymore. I didn't like it at all. I did it for the competition, but I don't want to go that low. So once this weight cut's done, I'm going to start bulking back up and kind of get back to where I was last March before we started buying the house and everything else. Where basically my diet was in check and I was gaining weight and everything else. So I want to gain weight because I want to get bigger, but I want to keep my body fat about the same as it is right now. So you can do that. You just got to be very tight on the diet, so you can't start getting all willy-nilly. Although I'll tell you, it's insane how much food you can eat. Like once you get your body really tuned in and like you're eating the right foods, and then you start to add it back. It's amazing how much food you can eat, and like just the very little bit you gain weight. Like, I mean, it's insane. Because I remember when we started last week, when we were eating when I was upping my diet, I could eat. Dude, I was eating so much because I was eating around 3,400 calories.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a lot of food when you're getting like chicken and rice and potatoes and everything. That's a ton of stuff.
So yeah, like it's almost like you get your metabolism, like you get your body kind of burning at a higher rate, and then you can burn through more food.
Yeah, well, so you become more insulin sensitive, right? And then you can start to up it, right? So like the heavier and heavier you get, as far as like your like adipose tissue and stuff, you become insulin resistant. Well, if you become insulin sensitive, your body can make better use of the nutrients that's coming in. So that's the goal. That's the idea behind it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like, for me personally, like I think there's definitely some goals that I want to be more focused, like more present in the moment. That's a weird goal, but like my mind.
So how are you going to do that?
Well, some of the things is eliminate distractions, like eliminate my phone use a little bit more. Like environment's a big thing for habits for me is curating a certain environment. Like maybe if I'm in the bedroom, probably getting the phone away from me. So it's not, I don't feel a desire or a need to do that. And then I want to be consistent with journaling, and then like being just that's something that helps me as well. Lifting weights. I've kind of been off and on with lifting. I want to get more consistent with lifting and just being more.
You should get a program for lifting.
I probably should. And I did one with Joe for a while, and it was actually good. And he actually, because my time's kind of limited, kids, still, the podcast and stuff. And Joe gave me something that was pretty good, like 2-3 days a week. Yeah. And it was just kind of these main lifts, big time lifts, kind of the big three. You got bench press, squat, deadlift, and then some other accessory work. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now. But being consistent with that lifting is something I need, because my body's feeling a little bit like I'm a little beat up, which I shouldn't be. But some of that's from just having to sit longer than I want to. So, which has been one of the worst things for me, is prolonged sitting has been, for my back, is horrible. Yeah. But that, and then just continue. Like, I think I want to be more, as far as training goes, I want to be more intentional about jiu-jitsu. Like, I really want to kind of hone in on a couple things and get better at those things. I feel like I've been stagnant a little bit. So that's something.
For the lifting, if any of you guys are like trying to get into lifting and be serious about it, the best thing to do is have a program. It really is, like, because if you like, a lot of us are all like strapped for time. We're strapped for everything. Like we live in a world of technology that was supposed to make things easier, and it's made things more difficult for us. Get a program though, because if you get a program, it's nice, because then you don't have to think. You go in and you just bang out the lift, right? And then once you kind of do the exercises enough that you know all your weights, as soon as you step in the gym, you know exactly what weight you need, you know exactly how many reps you're going to do. You just go in and knock it out. Like yesterday, I had a great leg workout. And again, it originally took me about an hour and 30 minutes. First time I did it, it's about an hour now, because I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm like, bang, 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 just get it done. So getting a program is helpful. As far as jiu-jitsu, one of the goals I do have is coming up with the system of drills for the gym, because we have so many different coaches that coach slightly different stuff, which is good, but I want there to be some uniformity amongst the group. And so what I'm going to do is come up with some drills where the drills are going to be the sort of the connection. So basically, no matter what, like, I don't care what you teach from back mount, because I know you're going to teach some good stuff. It might be different than what I teach, but you're going to teach some good stuff. I understand that the students will have these basic core movements and fundamental ideas down because of the drills. And so those are going to be like, once I get them all lined up, I'm still working on them, then it's going to be mandatory. It's like, when we do our coach, like, hey guys, we're working on this week, right? It's going to be said, all right, we're working on this week. Here's the 2 drills you have to do before you go into your technique. So and there'll be like a database put up so you guys can access it, because I want there to be a set of movements, because I think drills are so important for just developing muscle memory. And so if, like, let's say if someone comes to a class 3 times a week, I want them doing the same drills for those 3 days. So this way they're going to get that good muscle memory. So no matter what happens by the end of the week, whatever they retain, they're going to retain that muscle memory.
Yeah.
And so I'm still trying to I'm trying to whittle it down. The problem is so many. I'm trying to whittle it down, like which ones are the most core fundamental ones that we need to have, and which ones do we not? Which ones are going to be the most valuable versus the ones that aren't?
Right. The ones possibly that are more they can branch off of the most, right?
It's like basically looking for the Swiss Army knife versus a butter knife, right? It's like this thing's got all kinds of different things you can use with it. This one, no, that's one thing. Yeah. So it's like trying to figure out the ones that have the most like valuable application to the most areas and to that particular position at the same time.
Yeah.
So trying to figure that out, that'll be something that we're going to be doing in the gym. And I'm sure you guys will probably see some of that too, because as tends to happen, anytime I dive into a new project, you guys sort of see it and become a part of it as well.
Awesome. Let's get some questions.
All right, guys, let's jump into it.
Thank you guys for hanging out. We're going to start with D100 because
D100.
They said, what's the level difference between an MMA competitor versus or MMA competitor grappler versus strictly BJJ grappler?
That's a really hard one to say. So, this weekend they had or last week they had that Fury grappling.
Yes.
Which I found like an interesting thing because I love watching MMA grapplers grapple jiu-jitsu and grappling because their grappling is and I don't mean this in a negative way. It's simpler because they don't, if they're going to fight, they can't be upside down inverting, doing all kinds of kooky stuff. They have to focus on stuff that you could easily adapt to a fight situation. And I like that stuff because that is the jiu-jitsu that I grew up on. That's the jiu-jitsu I started learning. And that's honestly the jiu-jitsu I still use to this day. I don't really use a lot of funky stuff because, again, at the end of the day, I'm like, well, if this was a fight, how could we use this in a situation? Even things like half guard, you can still use in a fight. So as far as the difference goes, who knows? I don't know. Like it's very hard to quantify the level and everything else. But again, it's one of these things where just like MMA versus a strict boxer, the MMA practitioner is going to be at a disadvantage against a person who spends all their time working with their punches. A kickboxer versus a boxer, they're now struggling with the kicks. The MMA person versus a grappling practitioner who only does jiu-jitsu or only does grappling, they're going to be at the disadvantage because now they're going against a person who is more steeped in that particular discipline, and that's all they do. Now, it was interesting that they had the match with Sean Brady versus Craig Jones.
Yeah, he won.
And he won. But
decision.
Heel hooks were not legal.
They weren't.
They were not legal. Heel hooks were not legal. And Sean Brady did a good job of staying out of range. So he never really went for a good pass, but he never stayed, like he never fully disengaged either. He was right in this weird range where it was very smart what he did. And it seemed like it caused Craig some problems because Craig, he can't play his normal game because heel hooks aren't there. And then because they didn't want anybody to get injured.
Yeah.
Now he said that, Craig, to his credit, he was like, hey, there's no problem. It's like, that wasn't the problem. But, and he even kind of seemed like he was frustrated by the fact that there was never really any engagement between the two. Like they never really locked past, and they never made it past each other's frames. Like they were basically always out of range. And so it basically was, to me, it could have easily been a draw, but they gave it to him, I guess, for top position, that kind of thing.
What was the time limit? I didn't see it.
I think it was shorter. It was like maybe 7 minutes. Right?
Yeah. And then the rule set was just like
it's grapple match, no heel hooks.
Submission only.
Yeah. But they had judges.
Right. So I guess like the fight to, or the who's number one.
Yeah, fight to win, who's number one, like that kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, it was a really cool event. My one beef, and I did a video about this too. It'll be out in probably a couple of days. Is that their mats were too small. They had a raised platform, and I don't understand why people are doing this. They have a raised platform without a cage.
Yeah.
Like if you look at like say Chael Sonnen's thing, the Submission Underground,
right?
It's cage. First off, it's a safety thing. You start getting a double leg takedown and you go off. I mean, like you need space. Takedowns need lots of space. And so there were a couple guys that were good wrestlers and you could not really see the takedown battle because of the fact that there was no space to do it. I think at one point, Nicky Rod and his opponent were going and their feet were in the middle and on the edge of the out of bounds circle at the same time. This mat was not big at all. And I'm thinking like, what do you guys want them to do with takedowns? Takedowns are a lot of times very exciting. And especially with people that are MMA versed, they're going to be more likely to fight the takedown than they are just going to be to sit on their butt. Yeah. So it would have been a lot more fun to me if they made that mat bigger or just put it down on the ground. And I don't understand what the race platform is about. I guess maybe it looks
viewing,
but couldn't you just have stadium seating? I mean, it's like they don't put a basketball game. They don't put it on a race platform.
Really? Some gym or some, like I remember Vanderbilt. I used to watch Kentucky basketball all the time. They play Vanderbilt all the time. They had like this. It was weird. Like the floor was raised. So, but I think it's more for like viewership. Like it helps with viewing. And
I mean, to me, it's like because if you just had like some sort of stadium seating, it'd be very easy to see. Everybody would just be able to look down and see it. I think to me, it's like looking up is not any easier in it at all. It's like depending where you're at.
I definitely not crazy about the cage. Just for safety, it's good, but the viewing kind of like I've been to like MMA fights. Of course, it's really hard to see. You got stuff in the way.
Then you need to make that platform like Fight to Wins have a big platform. Like they've got plenty. You've got plenty of room to work on a fight to win.
Sure.
It's like, so like that. You just got to make it a bigger platform. We can't play this short platform.
Yeah.
But as far as the difference goes, D100, I don't know what the difference is, but the advantage that the grappler has versus the MMA fighter is that they only have to worry about this one particular discipline. I mean, this is the MMA fighters. The MMA fighters are jack of all trades. Some of them are masters at particular things, but ultimately they are really good at a lot of different stuff at the same time. And so like you could take a boxer, you could take a jiu-jitsu practitioner, you could take a kickboxer, put them into MMA and they're going to get crushed. But when they go out into the other sort of pure disciplines, they a lot of times struggle because they're in a situation where they have less things to worry about. There's less variables that they have to focus on.
Yeah. I do think like strictly jiu-jitsu, you know, you don't have to worry about as much. Obviously you can be more technical, have more technique. Yeah. Like if you're a MMA grappler, you're focusing on pressure, controlling limbs. Like, you know, you're doing some stuff with one leg, one control, like maybe head control, and then you have to throw. So you can't use all your limbs to really stabilize because you have to throw punches.
The one thing I will say is that sometimes, depending on the skill of the jiu-jitsu practitioner, sometimes MMA grapplers will frustrate the piss out of a jiu-jitsu practitioner because like a lot of times, okay, and this is to me, it's a sort of a misnomer, this idea of technical. Like in jiu-jitsu, for some reason, we've attributed technical to being like slow and methodical. I'm like, why is that technical? That's not technical. I mean, like it could be just as technical as a guy who's going really fast with razor sharp precision. Doesn't have to be slow, but there's this like, he's more like, you'll hear people, oh, you're just not technical. Because of why? Because I mean, if they beat you with this, they use technique, right? Some sort of technique. They maybe use a little strength too, but that's all part of it. You know, like, what do you mean technical? How do you mean technical? A lot of people don't have a good explanation.
I think, you know, in my idea of technical would be like they have a larger plethora of moves.
Sure.
They're larger. Like they have a larger. I mean, you don't need as much stuff. You're not gonna, like you say, you're not gonna invert in MMA.
Right. Well, so going back to what I was saying is that the MMA grapplers a lot of times will be very rough. And they're explosive, and everything that they do is with urgency because you don't have time to chill out and be methodical in a MMA fight all the time. And if you escape out of something, you better escape hard. And a lot of jiu-jitsu practitioners who have never rolled with that before, it's a struggle because it's like you're not engaging in the same patterns as your normal jiu-jitsu practitioners. And jiu-jitsu very much is in that situation where we're going a lot of times off pattern recognition, right? Like this is why when we learn a technique, okay, guys, we're going to go for this. We do this technique. Okay, guys, we go for this. The person may defend like this, and then we're going to do this. Basically, you're looking for patterns. And when people go at weird patterns and they don't do the thing that you're used to, it can really mess you up. This is why people in jiu-jitsu will struggle with wrestlers, MMA fighters, sambo practitioners, judoka, because they engage in very different ways. Now, over time, you can learn how to pick them apart. But in the beginning, it can really frustrate you because it's very different than what you're used to. So
let's do this one. 5'9", best. What techniques work best for my body type? I'm 5'9", 165. Upper and lower body are about the same length. I do passes with speed more than most, but not nearly as strong as many.
I don't know.
5'9".
I don't know. It depends because you're like 5'9", but what's your like how long are your arms? How long are your legs? And it's like the same length, but I don't know how long that is. You know, because I have friends that are 5'9" and they have fairly long legs and very dexterous legs, and they have great triangles. Whereas I got friends that are 5'9" and they can't triangle anything. You know, this is part of the thing. We can give you ideas based upon what works for us, Doug, but ultimately it's up to you to figure these things out. This is the fun thing about jiu-jitsu. It's the fun, and it could be the fear and the most infuriating thing at the same time. You're in a world, it's like a choose your own adventure book. I don't know if you ever had those when you were a kid. Like I remember when I was a kid, I had like they had these little choose your own adventure books where you're, you know, if you want to take the road to the left or the right, go to page whatever.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that there's no easy answer to say, this is it. This is what you need to do. This is the move for you. Now there could be like, I guess at some point, if someone came in and like started measuring people and like measure all their different like femur length and everything else and said, okay, like for instance, with deadlifts, like you can get what would be your ideal stance or your ideal position, whether it be sumo or a traditional stance, based upon they'll do like a measure of like certain parts of your body. You know, and I think it was they talked about this in the Sport Gene, where if you would go to the Olympic Training Center in certain countries, they would do measurements of your body and biopsies of your muscle tissue and say, this is the sport you need to play, regardless of what sport you played up to this point. You're designed to play this particular sport. So for you, though, it's not quite so clear cut. And so really what you've got to do, Doug, is you got to experiment. You got to try stuff. Now you can look for people around your same height and weight. That's always a good thing to do. Try to find people that weigh the same as you and look at them and find what they do. But ultimately, then you have to try it out yourself and you have to figure it out. And that's not going to necessarily be easy. But one of the things that I could do to steer you in a good direction is to look towards what other people are doing at your weight. That was really useful to me. That's something I've done since I was a white belt, was finding people that like were like kind of looked like me body wise, and like, well, what do they use? You know, for me, a lot of the guys use butterfly guard and half guard. Well, I love both of those positions, and they're some of my best. And so you could do the same. You could find people, competitors. I mean, you have YouTube, you might have Flow Grappling, you have all these things at your disposal. Take a little time, and it's like, you know, go watch people roll, go watch people compete, and find people in your weight class, find people that weigh the same as you, that maybe have the same body type as you, and find how they roll, find what they do, and sort of see those things. And then from there, you can try to experiment. You know, you can, if they're like a high level grappler, they might have a course, go buy one of their courses. If they don't have a course, you can watch one of their moves and try to break it down. But as far as giving you this is what you need to do, like, it would be very hard to do that over a message like this over the internet.
Chewy, similar questions about getting competition ready.
Yeah.
One was again from Doug, and the other one was from Guadalupe.
Let's go to Guadalupe.
And so he basically says train for about 5 to 6 months, 5 to 7 times a week. First comp is January 23rd. Word, my skill hasn't progressed enough to do well. There's something more I should be doing.
So here's the thing, Rivera, Guadalupe. What are you judging that on as far as how your progress is getting? How do you know? Like, how do you know you're not getting any better? This is one of the tricky things, because again, if you're training at a similar place all the time, it goes back to what I was talking about, like losing weight. You don't really know, because your skill gain is so gradual. You don't even really know. And if you're training with the same people, they're getting better too. So you're all getting better together. It's really hard to judge whether or not you're getting better or not. This can be sometimes the benefit of going to competitions, because you roll with people you've never rolled with. And sometimes you're like, well, I got better. The other thing to consider is that when you're talking about doing a competition, if this is your first competition, you don't even know what you're getting into. You think you do, and you probably done research and you know the rules, and that's great, but you don't actually know yet, because you haven't experienced it yet. It's like the first time I fought. I remember fighting. I watched it all the time. You know, I visualized in my head. I saw the fight happening, everything else. And I remember being there that day. I was so sick to my stomach all day long. I finally got into the ring, and I remember that cage door went clunk, and then they shut it and they locked it. And there was this surreal moment of like, whoa, I'm in a cage with another human being, and we're going to fight each other. We're going to do something that's illegal outside of this cage. So as soon as we step out of the cage, it is illegal to do what we're getting ready to do to one another. But within the confines of this cage, it is completely legal. And we fought. And that experience is one of those things where it's a transcendent experience, because you are not the same person when you come out of it, because you experience something you've never experienced before. It's like my friends, like, who were in the military, and it's all combat. Like, they trained, they did all their training and everything else. But the first time a gun went off, it's a different situation. It's not the same thing. You know, it's different. You're a different person on the other end. And so, not that I'm trying to compare what I do to that, because it's not even close to the same intensity, but just saying it's an experience that you haven't experienced yet, that you're planning to experience.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing, right? You prepare yourself for this thing, but until you've experienced it, you don't really know yet. And so with that said, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Train your tail off. Do the best that you possibly can. Go out there to win. Visualize the win happening, and do everything you can to make that happen. But ultimately, you got to get out there and just do the damn thing. Because the mindset you're going through right now of like, oh, well, you're training 5 to 7 days a week. I mean, there's really nothing else you're going to be able to do, bro. I mean, like, if you can't train more than 7 days a week. I mean, I guess you can train multiple times a day, but then you're just going to get overtraining. You're going to injure yourself. You're just going through this mental mind thing that happens when we get ready to do these big things. Again, we suffer more in our imagination than we do in our actual real life, right? You could go out there and kill at this tournament, but in your head right now, you're like, oh, I'm getting ready for this thing, and I'm getting nervous about it. And what if I haven't progressed well enough and I haven't done as much training as I should? This stuff all goes through our head. Every one of us that's competed or fought or whatever, this has all gone through our head at some point. So my encouragement to you is just keep training and see the course ahead, drill, make sure you have your game plan set in motion, everything else. And then when you get out there to compete, just do it. And don't put too much pressure on yourself for the first few competitions. Your goal in the first few competitions is just to do them, to get comfortable with the setting. Then you can start to get an idea of what you're really capable of in competition, and also get a better read as to how good you are. Because I can tell you, I've seen people compete and perform wildly differently than what they do in the gym. Some are killers in the gym. They compete and they don't do very well in the beginning. As they get more comfortable with competition, they do great. On the flip side, I've had people that somehow they don't really do very well in the gym. And then when they fight or compete, I mean, they're just amazing. So we're all a little different. So again, don't beat yourself up too much. What you're going through is pretty natural with the mindset. Just see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the main thing, that I was going to just touch on was just the game plan. That's the main thing. Have a game plan, an idea. You don't want to, tie up with them and then not know what you're going to do. It's just having a game plan from the feet and then go. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm ready. I remember my first tournament ever. I've probably been training 6 months or something. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what to do with takedown. Yeah. I literally got sat down in a mount. I got mounted, and it was against a guy from your gym. It was Chris. Yeah, I remember that. And it was terrifying because like, oh shit, this just started poorly. Yeah. But like having a game plan is, I think, like just because it helps you focus on not what your opponent's going to do and what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some value of having some feeling of control over that. Yep.
Speaking of which, shameless plug. That's right. I give away a game plan guide, jiu-jitsu.net/join. You can go get it for free.
Yep.
JOIN, by the way. Join.
Right. Oh, yep. We'll put it in there. Yep. Yeah. Here's one, Chewy. And we kind of talked about this with David Garmo on a podcast about, because he's David's a pretty high level competitor. He's done, he's fun to watch, he goes after it. And so this is from Kevin. Kevin says, when competing, are you afraid of injuring someone, either by someone not tapping or by your energy due to being in a competition?
No. That's what we signed up for. I don't want to hurt anybody. Keep that in mind. In the gym, I'm very, very conscious of, and I'm mindful all the time. I do not want to injure anybody, and I have a pretty good track record of not injuring people. I've been on the mats for almost 20 years. Well, 20 years if you include wrestling, and I've injured people you could count on one hand and have fingers left. The times where I've actually injured someone in a way that kept them off the mats more than for a few minutes, right? Like stump toes and stuff happen, but like I'm talking about like an actual injury. Again, accidental stuff happens, but still, a lot of it's very preventable. That said, as far as competitions goes, no. Like at a competition, I'm not going to unnecessarily be rough with anything. I'm not going to try to hurt anybody. If I put someone into a submission, they're going to have ample time to tap out, because, even at this point, I'm like a masters division. I compete at masters. I would compete with the younger guys. I just like 6-minute rounds. I don't like 10-minute. I think I did a video on this yesterday. I don't like long rounds. I think they're ridiculously long and they don't need to be that long. If you can't do your jiu-jitsu in 6 minutes, then you need to go faster. Like Olympic wrestling, one of the most intense sports ever, you don't need a 10-minute round for Olympic wrestling. You don't need 10 minutes for jiu-jitsu. I think it creates a lot of passivity, because most people can't go wide open for 6 minutes. And again, I guess some people like that, but again, I think it's one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why our sport is not even attractive to the people that do it. Most people couldn't tell me who the world champions are in their own sport, but they could tell me all kinds of football and basketball stats. It's like, you're not even interested in your sport. Anyway, get back to it. I'm not worried about injuring them, because again, when we do a competition, we both know what we're doing there. We're going to go after it. And again, when the match is over, it's all over, it's said and done. And during the match, we'll be as safe as we can, but we're going. And I've injured competitors before. Not intentionally, but it's happened. Sometimes just because you grab a hold of a kimura and you start to rip it a little bit quickly, or whatever, things happen. Or sometimes you slam someone and stuff happens. It just is what it is, man. So again, I'm that's not something I'm going to worry about. That's not something I need to worry about. And if you're competing, you shouldn't worry about it either. Because again, that's what you've signed up for. You guys have said we are going to basically have a fight without punches on this mat for this amount of time. Now we can be cordial before, we can be cordial after, but during, we're battling. And I mean, that's the way that I treat it. And that's the way most guys treat it. I mean, during the match, I mean, like I'm going to be a mean asshole to you because I'm going to try to break you. Not like physically, like not like I'm going to try to break you mentally. I'm going to try to put pressure on you. I'm going to dig my forehead into the side of your face. I'm going to squeeze you as hard as I possibly can squeeze you. And when I wrap my arm around your neck, I'm going to squeeze you until you tap out or until you go night-night, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. Nothing wrong with it. That's what we signed up for. It's a battle. And so you've got to be ready to go to battle. And so you can't be going into a competition where, I don't want to hurt the guy. Again, you got to like turn that part of your brain off.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. It's what you signed up for. I mean, that's you got to know those risks are there.
That's it. Most people, like most injuries don't happen in competition.
That's true.
Most of them happen in training. I mean, most of the time you don't get injured in competition.
So I just, did you ever do that study? So there was a study that was going around.
Yeah,
this guy had messaged me. I was actually went over, I kind of did a video recapping it. I'll release that probably in the next week or two, but, and they talk about the most where do most injuries occur? Mm-hmm. So obviously in training as opposed to competition, more occur in training. Of course, we train. There's more hours training.
Yeah, of course.
Even though competitions are intense and there's injuries that occur. So in training, and then obviously from submission, application of submissions is number one, and then the second one is stand up takedowns.
I've never had a serious injury from either one of those.
Yeah.
Mine have always happened just from freak accidents.
Yeah.
Like all my injuries, like all my serious injuries, like surgeries, just happen from freak accidents.
Yeah. Like the third one is like guard passing or those kind of sequences, those scramble. I think so. You got to kind of categorize in some way, shape, or form. But it was stand up is there's more variables there too. So you also got
to think, but with stand up too, people don't do stand up enough. So basically, you imagine how many injuries happen early on. And then, in from the ground, right? And then add in the factor that you're standing up and you could fall, right? So if people trained stand up more, they would have less injuries. But I think so because it's like leg locks. The more you train leg locks, the more less injuries you're going to have because you understand how to get out of them. You learn the right ways to turn, when to tap and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And you know how to apply the submissions with control and safety.
Yep.
When you don't, it turns into a crazy flailing leg mess and it leads to injuries.
Yeah.
I can tell you from our experience, like we had more injuries with legs when we did them less. Yep. As we did them more, we have less injuries. As we did more takedowns, we have less injuries. It's a simple fact that the more educated you are on positions, the more control you can be in places, and the more control you have in places, the more you can it's like when we're rolling, like if you roll with a black belt, this has happened numerous times where a black belt will be rolling and one of us will get like our toe caught in the shirt or something, or in the rash guard. Mm-hmm. We'll both immediately stop because we can feel it. And we'll say, hold on a second, remove the toe. And then we'll go back to rolling, right? Or we'll be in the middle of rolling and we can feel someone like let off the gas pedal for a second and are you okay? Because you can feel their body let up for a second. Are you okay? And then they're like, yeah, just whatever. On the feet, if you don't have enough control, you can't be that sensitive to everything. But as you become more controlled, you can become very sensitive to all the little, just some small adjustments and small feelings of the other person's body, that if something's out of place, you can feel it and make adjustments accordingly.
Yeah.
You can finish the takedowns with more control and softer, everything else. So I think that's why a lot of those happen.
All right. Check this one out, Chew. What do you think?
Why do some people in the same gym advance belts fast and others don't with the same level of knowledge? Okay, so what's up, Mike? So same level of knowledge, like how are we judging that? I can tell you that, again, jiu-jitsu progression is not linear. Like you could put people in and put them together and they're going to progress at different paces. And when I say progress, I mean the ability to apply jiu-jitsu against someone. If we're talking about just being able to regurgitate techniques, it's different. Like it depends on what the judging criteria. That the problem with a lot of times with belts is that they don't necessarily always have a clear definition of as to what's expected of you. But if you're talking about like advancing in belts, if your coach is expecting you to use those techniques against someone, well, then, the reason why the person is advancing is because someone probably got better at doing that than the other person. But again, you always have to sort of talk with your coach about that, because you don't want to, you kind of want to know what they think, So again, it depends on what your coach thinks. you'd have to check with them to get a for sure answer. But I imagine it's probably because in your gym, this is where I'm thinking is that some people are getting better at applying those techniques in live rolling versus other people and that kind of thing.
All right. So you can find something else or Chew.
Go up real quick. Something about drink water.
Something about drinking.
Go back up.
Drink a gallon of water a day helps digest your food. Stay away from starch as much as possible. As far as leaning. So that's Eli.
So my buddy Eli right there. So you can look at the picture if you're with us right now. He's a jacked dude. So he's the dude that I hired last year to help me out with my nutrition. And again, you know, I've gotten lean before and everything else, but again, he's like a wizard with that stuff. I remember like my weight dropped too quickly one week and he was like, eat a Pop-Tart with your final meal. I was like, what a Pop-Tart? And then like, you know, he's like, yeah, tomorrow you should be like 199. Magically I'm 199 the next day. But he's got some good information. He knows what he's doing. And so again, I hired him to help me out with my diet. So, and I don't know what you mean by starches. Like you can eat a shit ton of potatoes. Be fine. You know, I think sometimes like, you know, old stuff, like, you know, especially now, like carbs get a bad rap. Like dude, if you're training hard, like carbs are a godsend. You know, if you
need them,
if you eat them in the right proportion with your other foods and your other macronutrients, like it's perfect. It helps you train hard. Like I lost weight last year. I got super lean, but I never felt hungry and I always had energy for training. It was great. Opposed to like, I remember trying to do like the low carb stuff. I felt like death. You know, it didn't feel good at all, you know, and it just did not support me getting stronger or me really pushing my body intensely for competitions. If I didn't train as much, it probably would have been fine. But like trying to train really hard multiple times a day, couldn't do it. I just didn't feel good on it.
Well, and I think we talked about this too. Everybody wants like this perfectly packaged, like this is how you do it. Follow like we were talking about that we saw like on Instagram, the one guy just eats raw meat.
Yeah.
Like he's literally sitting there. All the videos on his Instagram are him eating like raw beef or like raw chicken. And I'm like, this is
here's a little lesson for you guys. Most of the time, not always, but most of the time, if someone is shooting something out that's very simple, like life is gray area. Like life is filled with ambiguity, right? A lot of times, one of the best ways to market something is to give it a hard and fast rule. Okay. So it's like, for instance, this is why there's all these different diets and some of them work for some people, some of them don't, but all these different diets, there's like the low carb diet, the no carb diet, right? Just don't eat carbs. Then there's the carnivore diet, just eat meat. Then there's the vegan diet or vegetarian diet, don't eat meat. You know, these diets are just like these clear cut and they're very simple to follow rather than you developing your ability to figure out things and be intelligent with it and in moderation. Just just don't eat meat. You'll be good. Right. That kind of thing. And so you got to be careful about that because a lot of times those things, and they do this everywhere else too. This is if you look in other niches and other businesses, this is a marketing tip for you guys and to be aware of it. A lot of times one of the things that they will say is like, give it a hard and fast rule, because if you can have a hard and fast rule, very simple to digest, to nibble on idea, then it's easier to sort of, it's more palatable and it's easier for the masses to consume. Now you don't want to consume that stuff. You want to be intelligent about it. And a lot of times the intelligent options are not the most simple. They're very complicated. We see this over and over and over again. Right. And so just be mindful of that. So you don't want to get played. So if someone's just like throwing this out there, this very simple idea, you know, like it's not so like me and my friends were talking like yesterday, like last year, defund the police. Okay. Very complicated idea with what we're talking about. Like, do you actually know what they deal with? Have you ever been around them? Have you ever had to go to a domestic call where some guy's beating his wife and his kids? Are we going to send a social worker in there where she might get killed? Like, hey, like, are there things that like the war on drugs? Maybe that's a bad idea. That didn't work out so well. Maybe there's more complicated things, not just this one thing, right?
I agree.
Even like with you saw Jake Paul too recently was like talking about like Dana White, like saying, oh, he's not paying the fighters enough. Okay. Do you know what their balance sheet looks like? Do you know how many employees he employs? How many people he pays? How much money they make? Because ultimately, those are the people that make you understand. If it wasn't for the marketing department at the UFC, you would not know who the fighters were. They build the fighters. They take these guys who are really good at this thing, and then they build them up and they give them a platform by which they market them and they promote them. And this is why the UFC, opposed to boxing, they have multiple people. They always have a new person. Right? They can turn Francis Ngannou, who's a monster, and they make this guy into this terrorizing, fearsome foe, which he is. But again, then if he leaves, they'll find another one, and it keeps going. Opposed to boxing, where they'll build this one person up, and then when he's gone, it's like, all right, who else? It's like they put all their eggs there, because in boxing, who's the next up and comer? There's a few people that are out there, but no big mega stars. UFC is always producing them, and it's part of their marketing part. So again, it's easy to say because it's emotional versus logic. Emotion says, yeah, we want to pay the fighters more because we love the fighters. It only makes sense. But then logically, you got to say, okay, well, what else is making all this stuff happen? How much money is being spent to all these other people that are making this whole event happen, like basically almost every weekend now,
Yeah.
And so you got to know those things before you just like say, well, yeah, this is it's like, it's not quite so simple. It's very complicated. And so again, simple ideas are easy to digest and they they get you going. But a lot of times the actual solutions are that are realistic, that could actually work, very complicated solutions, not so simple. So you got to be careful.
A lot of nuance too. There's a lot of like modifications, things that need to be changed, adjusted. Here you go, Chew. What about this one?
All right, it's from Kyle. It says, when you're rolling with a lower belt and playing, do you go harder to defend or sub, or keep playful and let them finish? It depends. So like right now we've been doing back mount, and back mount is like my best position. So I'm choking everyone out. Like I'm not going to let anybody win. So like, it's just the way it's going to be. So like, a lot of times I'll be playful, but like with this position, like I'm going to choke you over and over again, like as we're going, because I want everybody to feel that. So like, granted, we're rolling a little differently than what you guys probably would. The way that we're rolling right now in the gym is, let's say that you're rolling with a partner, you can only submit from the back mount or side control. Those are the two options I'm giving them right now. And then after you're done, someone gets submitted, you stand up and you wait for the next group, and then you immediately roll. So your roll could last up to 40 minutes, or it could roll for like 2 seconds. It basically doesn't matter. And then you immediately grab a new partner that becomes available. So you might get a rest or you might not. It just depends. And with this, that allows me to roll with more people. And so like when I'm rolling with the white belts, I'm choking them out. Like I want them to feel that position because I'm basically hitting them with the same stuff I'm showing, because I want them to feel it. Now, a lot of times when we're doing full rolls, I allow the white belts to work a little bit, as long as they do the technique correctly. If they do the technique correctly, I'll kind of let them go through. And then if they don't, I'll catch them in something, and then I'll explain why. Like, see, you left your arm right here. That's why I caught you in that triangle, that arm bar, that kind of thing. So it really depends. There's rolling's like medicine, and there's different ways to roll to get different desired effects. RV, what's your approach with diet and exercise for bulking and getting stronger while keeping the same body weight fat? Well, so basically, I mean, like, as far as like with diet and exercise and bulking, so really it's just adding more food into the mix. So like Eli, for instance, we did this last year. We cut a bunch of weight for the tournament, and then I wanted to get back up and get bigger, maintaining jiu-jitsus too. Well, then when we started adding the food in, we just started adding little bits of food. So each week we would add a little bit of food, would be, just maybe 100, 200 calories or something. And we would just keep upping that up until all of a sudden the weight started going up. And then when the weight stalled, we would just add more food to it. And again, just maintaining a consistent regimen. So, I mean, it's no different. I mean, really, like, training is a stimulus to your body. So the big thing, if you're going to bulk, you need to back off training. If you're training like all the time, you need to like give a little attention to your lifting. And then from there, you just raise your food intake. I mean, it's interesting. You can lift weights, and depending on the amount of food you take in, I mean, it's really going to determine what happens to you. If you're lifting weights and you're going into a caloric deficit, you're going to lose weight. If you lift weights and you're going into a surplus, you're going to probably gain some weight and some muscle. So, I mean, I know people say like it's not just about like the calories or whatever. It's like, well, it's not. I mean, there is some importance to getting the proper protein and carbs and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But as far as gaining weight, I mean, it comes down to, you got to get some calories in there. And this can be difficult because if you're eating good, nutritious food, like one ingredient foods, like whole foods, it's really hard to get lots and lots and lots of calories, because you can eat a ton of it. And it's, I mean, like, really, if you actually look at the macros and like the actual calorie content of, like, say, like some white rice and some chicken breast and like stuff, it's not as much as you think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can consume easily like more than that in like crappy food, like junk food.
Oh yeah.
You know? So basically you do the same thing. If you're going to try to bulk, you want to lighten up on your rolling a little bit, so you're not burning too many calories, and then try to add some more food into the mix.
Chewy, here's this is kind of a few different sections here, but it's from Nighttime World, and he says he's Canadian blue belt training in Osaka, Japan. His school has an iPad for keeping track of your attendance and also a good curriculum.
Okay.
Now going down here, he says his brother trains in Canada, and he told me his school does not have a curriculum, nor do they keep track of attendance. And he said he should find a new school.
Why?
That's the thing for me. We've had some questions about the curriculum part that can be negotiated a little bit free, but the attendance thing, like, what's the point of the attendance thing, right? Like, we had somebody send us a message like, hey, I've attended this many classes, and this training partner of mine has attended the same amount, and they got promoted. I didn't.
Yeah.
What's the deal? What should I do? And I'm like, so you're telling me you don't feel like you got promoted? I basically reframed the question. You don't feel like you got promoted because you attended a certain number of classes and you were expecting a promotion after that number of classes. Does that make any sense? Yeah. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, it should never be like, some people don't need as many. Some people are just better.
Yeah. And
they don't need as many classes or time or whatever you want to.
I mean, it depends on you as a person, because some people like that. Some people like that. I don't like, I came from the world of wrestling. And when I came into jiu-jitsu, I was not looking for any, like, I wasn't looking for someone to tell me, like, I've been there for this many classes. I wasn't looking for any of that, because I'm like, I'm wrestling. I understand what this takes. I got to keep training really hard, and I got to focus on what I'm doing. And I'm not necessarily going to be great at everything. I will know a lot more than I actually will use on a daily basis, because you're going to have a sliver of your game that's really good, and then the rest of it you just know. It's like Hodger. Hodger said this. Hodger Gracie, the great Hodger Gracie, one of the goats of jiu-jitsu, said that mastery. He can count on like maybe two hands and have fingers left at how many techniques he's mastered, right? And this is the dude that has done things in jiu-jitsu that no one else really has. I'm talking about like choking people with white belt techniques at the highest level, like over and over again, and nobody can stop it. And he was like, yeah, I've got this many moves mastered. Some people really like the attendance thing, though. They like getting their check mark. They like having this very clear, I need to be here for X amount of classes, and then I can get promoted or whatever. For me, I never liked it. I thought I just never liked it. To me, it's like, it takes away from what I think should be important, which is you training and developing yourself. A curriculum's fine. I don't think it's a bad thing. Although I've seen there's a negative side to curriculum sometimes where, again, with a sport that's ever evolving and changing, I've gone to places where I roll with people, and you can tell that there's a clear curriculum because they all roll the same. There was not room for expansion and for you to play your own game. And then there are gyms that do a curriculum, but then they have their own games and stuff like that. So it really depends on the person. But if you say his brother,
yeah,
if your brother is in that gym and he's training and he enjoys it, why should he have to train? It may not be what you like, right? Maybe you want the attendance and tracker and you want the curriculum and things like that, but maybe it's something he likes. Maybe he's not the same, like wired the same way mentally, because a lot of times like an engineer type, they need like A, B, C, D, they need that like clear cut path. Yeah. Whereas there's people like me that are very much more on the artistic slant where it's like, I just want to play. I want to experiment. I want to get my hands dirty. I just want to see how things work. I don't want people to tell me I have to stay in this box. And everybody's a little different. So I don't think the lack of a curriculum or lack of an attendance sheet is a sign of a bad gym. It could just be a gym that's going in a slightly different direction than what maybe yours does.
What do you think about that one?
What is the difference between a brown belt and a black belt? As a black belt, how do you know when someone is ready for their black belt? Or how do you know someone's ready for their black belt? It's a good question. Good question. So these are interesting questions because people want these clear answers. Like, what does it mean to be a black belt, right? The thing is, like for me, if I'm going to promote someone to black belt, they got to be able to roll with black belts. I mean, that's when the rubber meets the road, that's a big part of it. Like if you can't hang with a black belt, you're not a black belt. Now, there are exceptions to this rule. Maybe you're older, maybe you've got some different injuries or something like that. That can be a problem. But if you can't hang and roll with a black belt, and assuming that you're a decently healthy person, like, I don't see that you as a black belt yet. There's a fine tuning that comes through that, and fine tuning is so hard to replicate or so hard to quantify, right? Like when you think about jiu-jitsu, getting better at jiu-jitsu, we'll say by using it against someone else, right? That's how we'll define getting better at jiu-jitsu. You're using jiu-jitsu against someone else. How do you quantify what that is? It's not something that you can always tangibly put your finger on. Because a lot of times you're saying that you just got better at this movement by moving like 2 milliseconds to the side faster than the other person. that became you being fast enough to hit the armbar. I mean, that's hard to really get down to what that is, but you can see it when you're rolling. So you can see it. And this is something where when you watch, when a higher level jiu-jitsu practitioner watches, it's almost like this intuitive sense of how good someone is. This is why, like a lot of us jiu-jitsu practitioners, we were ragging on the dust guy, because intuitively we can look at it. I think Malcolm Gladwell talks about it in his book, Blink, and he talks about the idea of thin slicing. We can just take an instant look at something and go, something's off, right? Or we can take a look at something and kind of get a grip for how good someone is. Like I can watch someone roll, and I can almost have an idea as to whether or not they're going to kick my ass, or if I can probably handle myself with them just fine. You know, and I can't explain what exactly is going on and when I'm looking at them, but I can tell you that I just know. And that's very, very rarely is that wrong. Like every now and then someone will surprise you, but for the most part, that's pretty dead on the money. And so saying like, that's a big part of it. Now, I want the black belts to be, first off, as far as black belts, I want them to make sure that they're good people. So I would not promote anybody in black belt that I don't think could be a good leader, could be a good representative, could be a good role model. I want them to be inside the gym for a period of time. There has to be, I like them to have some time at a certain belt for at least 2 years or so. Not to say it always has to be that way, but I like people to be brown belt for at least a couple of years so they can have some time to grow in that belt. I also want them to know their game, I need to know that they know a particular part of the game to such a T that we would call it black belt level. You can do this by either having them teach, or you can roll with them and get a feel for it, right? Every one of my black belts has I could tell you, like when they were promoted to black belt, there was a quality of their game that I could say, this is some part of their game that's really tight. It's so good. And if they get another black belt there, there's a good chance they're going to finish them. And then again, along with those things too, their personality, everything else, then it comes down to like, can they roll? Can they hang? And that's a big part of it. And that's the way it was always done back in the day. I mean, like when you listen to guys like Pedro Sauer, I was listening to him on a podcast talk about how he got his black belt. He's basically kicking everybody's butt, and Elio and Hickson were like, all right, he's kicking all the black belts' butts. Time to go. And so again, it's an older way. I know there's this drive where you go do your little tests and stuff like that, which is fine. But I like that old way of basically you're in the trenches with your coach on a regular basis, and you can have testing criteria, of course, but in the end, it's like there's a bond there. And again, it's not so easy to simply quantify like, oh, this is it, this is that. But those are some of the things that I would share with you.
I think, one of the things, we had some guys that were brown and you were waiting to promote them. There was a couple of elements you looked at maybe of their games that still need a little bit of fine tuning.
Yeah.
That was a little bit, they had elements that were black belt level.
And
there was a couple things that maybe you saw that maybe was like, that still needs a little bit of adjustment.
Yeah. So here's an example. So we took these black belts together, had all my black belts and brown belts come together. I had the brown belts roll with some of the guys, and I would put them in different positions. And I noticed that for this, there's one guy he's talking about. The black belt was amazing from top, like just crushing people from top. On his back, though, didn't have it. And so I told him, I was like, I'm not going to promote you to black belt until you work on your bottom game. You got to get a better bottom game because it's night and day. So we need a black belt bottom game to go with that really superb black belt top game. And that was something to work on. And so again, in the way that I saw that was from having him roll with multiple different people who were at that same skill level, the black belt skill level that I want him to be a part of.
Do you know what that is?
No.
Oh, they said something. There was an earlier question, but I don't know what it was. All right. Right there. Do you see that?
Oh, I'm not sure. Let's move on.
All right, we'll move on. Another question here.
Seems like there's more popping up.
Yeah. So one was like about using spinal locks. I can't find the spinal. So one was about spinal
locks.
Back.
Spinal. It's like my favorite sound bite. My back is broken.
Yeah, here we go. Here's one which says
stop doing
my coach told me stop doing spinal locks as they're illegal in BJJ competition, but they are my style for MMA. What do I do? I mean, do them during MMA? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, man, like there's a lot of stuff we do in the gym that's not legal in competition, like slicers and stuff in the gi, but I mean, it's legal, so you can just do them. I think as long as you're giving someone adequate time to tap out, or even telling them like, hey, bro, like I could really extend you bad. Because some people don't see, the problem is like some people don't know what a spinal lock is. So if you put it in them, like they may not know that they're caught in something at first, and all of a sudden, like if you keep extending, it's going to get bad. It's like a neck crank. If you get caught in a really good neck crank, it hurts, yes, but if it continues, it can do some serious damage to your neck. Like, because again, there's the submissions where we know our arm is going to instantly break, right? Oh, I got to tap out.
Yep.
But there's things like a neck crank where if you don't have a good way to get out of it, you need to tap, because I understand it just hurts, and we can say, oh, man, that was just pain, whatever. Yeah, but eventually you're going to start pulling those vertebrae apart, and it's going to be bad news. Yeah. You're going to start tearing, you're going to start pulling muscles, everything else. And so with the spinal lock, you just have to make sure that the people know what the heck's going on with it so they don't get hurt. And so I would keep trying to use them and talk to your coach about it. But then also maybe find some other options from those positions that you're getting the spinal locks from. So again, you may not want to do jiu-jitsu competitions all the time, but maybe have some other options too. Like get to the point where you could get to the spinal lock, but then say, okay, well, I could go for my spinal lock here. What else could I do for this position, and explore some different options as well if your coach decides that you can't use them. Because again, what I think doesn't matter, because your coach is going to make their decision. Mm-hmm. But if for some reason you can use it in MMA, but you can't use it in training, get to the point where you could hit it, and you could even like touch the grip. Like maybe you're going to grab the head and pull. You could touch it and then let go, and then immediately go back to another submission that you could chain together, so you could have more options from the technique.
Yeah, use it like maybe as a setup of some sort. Get there and then find options off of it.
Yeah, and then know that you can get there reliably, so that if you ever fight and want to use it, you can also use it still in a fight.
Here's an old person question. Are there any techniques you can't do anymore or don't do as often due to age?
I don't do cut through passes. I've never really liked cut through passes. It puts a lot of torque on my knee, so I don't like them. I just think that the risk reward's not there for me. There's plenty of other ways to pass besides going for that knee slice pass with your knee, because especially when that knee's cut across, I've seen so many people jack their knees up doing that. So I don't like that. The knee cut, don't use that much at all. Never have. I also don't invert very much. I never have. And again, part of the reason why was I knew people that inverted a lot. They all had neck problems. And so I was like, well, I don't really want neck problems, so I'm not going to invert. It just seems like a bad idea. There's plenty of other ways for me to sweep someone or catch someone in other stuff. I don't really want to fold my body in half and have some big 200-pounder flopping on me. So that's something I stay away from. I just don't think it's a good idea. And then other than that, there's really nothing else that I've used that I don't use now. Those are two movements that I'm not a big fan of. It's like, I don't like flipping upside down my neck, and I don't like playing a lot of, I don't like doing like any sort of knee cutting. Usually if I knee cut, I immediately switch it to a different pass that puts my knee in a more of a straight angle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You got any that you don't use?
Not really. I don't do rubber guard a ton. I play with it a little bit. Now, here's the thing. You can play it safely, but you have to develop that flexibility and that mobility. Talk to, Brandon McCatherine can freaking put his ankle to his face. There's still some dangers to it, and it takes some time to develop. I have some like knee issues, like if my knee gets folded like that, it bugs me. So I don't really do that. I think that there's a lot of benefits to inverting, obviously, but there's also some.
It's useful.
It's useful, but you're kind of like, it's one of those things, like you're going to pay for it.
Yeah. But if you do that repetitively. Why are you training, right? Like if you're not training for like the world championships or something, you don't really need to do it. There's other sweeps. I mean, it's a great thing for like a lot of younger guys and stuff like that use it in competition. But if you don't need to use it, there's other options. I
also think like if you use it, be selective and make sure your body's prepared for it. Like,
sure.
Sometimes it is beneficial to use it with the bigger person to get underneath them. Mm-hmm. However, you are risking. You're risking getting folded up. You're risking getting flattened. Like really compressed, and it can cause problems. So it's kind of just risk versus reward. There are benefits. There's benefits to every position.
Sure.
I mean, obviously a knee slice or knee cut,
that's great. That can be a great pass. One. It just, when they get that ankle caught, I've seen lots and lots of meniscus tears, everything from that damn thing.
Yeah, I definitely I use lockdown, but I try to be pretty controlled, and I depend who I use that with, because lockdown is one of those positions that
meniscus ripper.
Oh yeah, you got to be, again, same thing. Like people think they can just pressure in or try to kind of like cut their knee. They don't realize they have to back off. So that's one, like I'm selective with who I use it with. Somebody that's an upper belt that's trying to flatten me out, I'll use it. So I don't know. I think it just depends. I think you just more than anything, if you're older, you have to kind of modulate your intensity.
Yeah.
Your intensity of how hard you go.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main thing, I think.
For sure.
Let's see. So this one's I'll kind of explain it. Murat says anyone who rolls competes after going through anterior cervical disc. So it's a fusion, cervical fusion, or neck surgery. Recently had, and I'm afraid I won't be able to roll again at a high level. We have somebody at the gym that has a cervical fusion. A lot of
Tony.
Yeah.
So anterior is everything go to the front.
Yeah, they go through the front, and they basically what they do is, it's kind of sounds a little morbid, but they take your throat, they move it over, and the reason why they go through the front, there's less trauma to the tissue, the muscles. So basically, you can, I definitely would be mindful. It takes time to build some strength in there, and be, be careful. You gotta get range of motion back. I mean, you are susceptible to certain things. But a lot of athletes, a lot of MMA fighters have had this, and they're getting popped in the head, and they get their head kind of popped back, and they fight with it. If you can develop the stability in the neck and the strength, I think it's possible.
Probably developing some neck strength, and then finding good partners
and good positions you want to avoid. I
mean, because again, it's like, when you get injured, you have to then, like Eugene said, find good positions that you don't experience pain. And then from my standpoint, like with our guy Tony, like we know Tony has some things going on, right? Like we know Tony's like had some surgeries and stuff. So we try. I'm not going to roll with Tony like I would with like some like buck wild 18-year-old kid, right?
Gotta be controlled.
Got to be controlled. You got to make sure you take care of them. And so, and also keep this in mind: your body is a finite resource. It's going to whittle down. There is going to come a point in all of our time where you're going to have to change, and you will never be able to roll at the same level you did at some point. That's just going to happen to all of us, right? There's no way around that. That's okay, right? You have to be able to change as things change. You don't want to be you don't want to be like the 40-year-old guy that, I don't want to say this because that'd be mean.
Say it.
No, I'm not gonna say it. You want to make sure that, like, as situations are changing in your life, you change with them. Okay. We'll just say it like that. And so for you, Murat, if you got, like, if your neck's feeling banged up or whatever, you got to make some time for it. Let it heal up, strengthen it up. And when you come back to roll slow. And I have no idea whether or not you're ever going to be able to roll at the same level you could before, but nonetheless, you can still roll. You just need to be choosy about your partners a bit, so you make sure you guys aren't going to like crank your neck with something stupid or anything like that. So
and avoid avoid putting your head in certain positions. Like really watch guillotines.
Get ready to tap fast on stuff.
And communicate with your training partners. Like, hey man, I'm recovering from this. Like, just watch it. Let's do other things. Let's just maybe modify our rules with training. Like, I'm not going to go after your neck.
Yeah.
You don't go after mine. Let's just do, arms, legs, whatever.
All the time. Like we have like one of the guys right now that was training Jeff. Jeff had some rib injuries. And so he's been dealing with it for about 4 months. It's on the almost done. And, and one of those things, but with like Jeff, it's like, there's certain times, like with certain positions, I'm very light on because I don't want to put pressure on those ribs. We still get a great roll, but we just slow down in certain areas.
And communicate. Yeah, like, you're okay, communicate with them while you're doing it. And I don't know if this question, if this even needs to be answered, but thoughts about using pressure against training partners? Absolutely.
Hell yeah. Use that pressure. They need to, like, as long as you're keeping them safe, you can squeeze the crap out of your partners. They need to learn how to deal with it.
Yep. Chewy, I think we can both maybe answer this one. It's from Bree. Went through 8 months of PT in 2021 and kept training some. How do I protect my hips while training going forward?
What would you say, PT? I mean, I would say, here's what I would say, then you can take, because this is your forte.
All right.
I would say, one, do all that device that I just talked about with the neck injury, right? Like basically, like, change your training and adapt to it, find good training partners, and then keep doing all that, like all that stuff that you were doing for your hips to like keep them strong. Keep doing it. Don't let up on it, because what happens a lot of times, and I've seen this happen, I've done it before, a lot of people have done it before, is when the pain's gone, you stop keeping your routine alive. But the problems are your hips are jacked up. Those hips are always going to be jacked up now. Just consider that. Like, you're probably always going to have jacked up hips. So we all have jacked up parts of our body, right? So now what you need to do is you need to sort of include certain exercises in on the regular for maintenance. And it's a game changer. Like for me, like one of my biggest problem areas is my thoracic spine. It sucks. I've spent so long rounding my back. And it's never going to be perfect. It just is what it is. Now I can fight all. I used to have a lot of shoulder injuries because of it. I don't have any shoulder injuries anymore because I'm constantly working on my upper back to pull myself back into position to help fight against those posture destroying rounding issues. And so what I would say is take a lot of those exercises, and as you're easing yourself back into training, make sure you keep those exercises into the rhythm and just use them as maintenance. What would you say?
Well, getting back to it, it depends on what's going on. Number one, specifically, what is injured? I mean, is it the cartilage? Is there some kind of cartilage issues or a bone? It just depends on what's going on, because you do have cartilage in that hip, kind of like you do in your shoulder.
Yeah.
And so what's the deal? Like, strengthening is huge. Having adequate mobility is huge. If you don't have adequate mobility and somebody forces you in a position your hip can't go, and then you have strength in those end ranges. So I do a lot of mobility work and a lot of strengthening at some odd angles, specifically for jiu-jitsu. Like I'll strengthen with the hip in a rotated position, and I'll kind of do some isometrics and things like that, where you kind of stabilize. And obviously you can't go, if as long as it's not hurting you, you can't go wrong with, strengthening the hips, doing squats, deadlifts. I mean, that's vital, right? But mobility is vital as well. And then like, you may avoid certain positions. You may avoid certain maybe it's your right hip, and you may avoid playing side control or playing a half guard on one side versus the other, or butterfly on one side versus the other. It just depends on what bugs you. You may avoid where somebody can really fold on your hips. And so, I mean, that's kind of it. It just really depends on the person. Type of guard you play. You may modify. Who's it? Gordo that had
he was in a terrible. So hip. Gordo was in like a bad motorcycle accident. His knee got jacked up, and so he couldn't play full guard. So he had to play more half guard. And so a lot of times people have to adjust their training with their injuries, and so you may have to give up certain positions in order to accommodate whatever's going on with your body.
Yeah, develop new things, new elements of your game. Yeah. I don't know this exactly. Garage training better than no training?
If you're just talking about getting together with your friends and training a bit, then yeah, it's better than no training in a heartbeat.
Yeah. This is from Eli. Eli said, carbs are energy, timing and portion is key.
Yeah, that's right.
Anything to add to that, Chewy? That says it pretty well.
That's right. I mean, like the thing that happened was like when I got a diet from him, shoot, I ate more food than I was before I was dieting.
Satisfied customer.
And I lost weight.
Yeah.
I was like, it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. This is an interesting question from Brian. Is it normal as a white belt to not have passion for BJJ in the beginning?
I mean, I don't know what we'd say is normal, but if you don't really want to train, I mean, then maybe you shouldn't do jiu-jitsu. Maybe you should find something else. Like, I don't mean that in a negative way, by the way. I'm just saying, like, people go, jiu-jitsu is for everyone. And I would say, no, it's not, because not everybody wants to do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Not everybody's meant to do it, just like nobody's meant to do anything, the same. So if you really don't, I mean, I don't know, if you like it, it's one thing, but if you don't have some crazy passion for it, that's okay. I mean, like, I don't, like, the passion, like you'll hear some people talk about jiu-jitsu as if it's like the next coming of Jesus Christ or something. Like, oh my God, jiu-jitsu is amazing. Oh, I was never like that. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I trained all the time. I loved training, but like I wasn't like some of the stuff that I see where like jiu-jitsu is life. It wasn't that way for me. It was just, I love training, and it's a great part of my life, and I love doing it, and I want to do it more. And that was it. And it just grew from there, So if you're like that, where you really enjoy training, then keep training. You don't have to necessarily be the most passionate, but here, I'll tell you something, Brian, one of the things I've noticed as a coach is the people that come in that are the most vocal about how passionate they are about jiu-jitsu tend to not stick around. It's the people that end up just training because they like training, and they enjoy doing it, and they just kind of go at their own pace. Those are the people that end up sticking around for the longest, at least in my experience with students. Most of the time, the people who are the most vocal about how passionate they are like they're the shooting stars. They come in with this, they burn out fast, and the people that don't, they kind of have the slow burn, and they kind of stay around for a little bit longer. So I don't think you need to be crazy passionate about it in the beginning. It's just something you're doing. But if you don't enjoy doing it, now that's another thing. If you don't enjoy doing it, then don't do it. Because again, I know a lot of times people get into jiu-jitsu, and they're like, well, man, I was listening to Joe Rogan, then I was listening to Jocko, then I was listening to that bearded asshole guy named Chewy on the internet, and I was like, I gotta train. And then you train, and then you don't experience the same feelings that we did. That's nothing wrong with you. It just means that we have a different path in life, and there ain't nothing wrong with that. There's other things that you can do in your life that might fit the space there.
Yeah, like you talked about, one person that you would talk about was pretty quiet, and Adam. Me and Adam came in. Adam was really quiet initially. Now he's hilarious, and he's kind of, he's always been hilarious. He's kind of quiet initially, but Adam was one of those guys, like he just would train.
Look at Dustin.
Yeah,
Dustin, one of our brown belts, super quiet guy. Like, he's a killer. He's super quiet though. He's been training with me for over 10 years.
Consistent. He's there all the time. Yeah, just shows up, does the work. All right. What about and I don't think you really recommend this, but read that one,
Chewy, how often do you recommend visiting other gyms? I mean, I don't necessarily visit gyms all the time. I mean, a lot of times I'm doing seminars and stuff, so I visit gyms, and every now and then we'll have an open mat at my gym so other people can train. But as far as recommending like how often you should do it, I don't know that there is a specific do it this many times a week or year or whatever. It's really up to you. I mean, if your coach is cool with it and you can go train every now and then, it just depends on what you want to get out of it. I think that going to other gyms a lot of times is just kind of a cool thing where you can roll with other styles from time to time, but it's not necessarily. And there's not necessarily a time as far as how often you want to do it. So it's really up to you.
I think it's definitely like if you're somebody that's you want some different looks. Even if you're competing, it takes some of the nerves out of there too, because you're meeting people you don't know and you're training. It can be nerve-wracking for sure, because you're like, oh man, nobody knows me, and are they going to go super hard, or can you handle it, right? Can you hold your own? You may discover that you're doing really well, or some things you're good at, some things maybe you're not good at.
And you got to figure out what your reasons for wanting to do it are, because I remember like I used to travel. I used to go to a bunch of the other local gyms when I was like a pretty tough white belt, and it was very much for an ego trip. Because I was a white belt at the time. What I was actually a green belt, which was kind of an intermediary belt between white belt and blue belt.
Yep, I know that belt.
And I would go to these gyms that locally, and I would go to the open mats and roll or train with people during their classes. And I was doing it because I wanted to test myself against their blue belts and other people. And I would go in and I would usually beat people, and I would leave like, yeah, beat that blue belt. I'm only a white belt kind of thing, So it was very much an ego trip. I wouldn't recommend that because we live in a different time period, and you'd probably get smashed for doing that. Probably wouldn't get welcome back either. But it can be fun to roll with different styles and test yourself. And it is fun, like when you notice that your style is good enough to beat other people. That is still enjoyable, but maybe it doesn't have to be your main reason.
Did doing that ever bite you in the butt?
No, I got lucky. Yeah, I got lucky because even with just like 6 months of experience and like a couple of years of wrestling at the time, I was like one of the best people in the city. I mean, there was some guys that were still better than me, but I could hang with most people.
Right.
Plus, I was young and I was focused. So,
all right, let's go to this one, Chew. JR, any advice for a guy doing BJJ for a couple months and getting tapped by everyone, including people newer than him? I love jiu-jitsu, but it's definitely a punch in the gut.
So I think people get sort of like wrapped up in this idea of like how long I've been training. It doesn't matter. Again, let's say this new person comes in. I don't know. Again, I don't know your situation. It's too hard to do this as far as giving you something specific. But think about this. New person comes in and maybe they do better than you in less time. Well, you don't know if that person's been like how athletic they are, what kind of sports they did previously, what kind of, because all that stuff comes into it, bro. You don't know what kind of like focus they have. You don't know what kind of lifting. Are they younger than you? I mean, there's all kinds of factors that can be tossed in that can change things. I mean, if I take two people that are in the gym, if one of them has an athletic background, I don't care if he's playing baseball. If they have an athletic background, the guy with the athletic background is typically going to be better than the person with the non-athletic background, at least early on. And they're going to get better faster because they have the neuromuscular connections that are formed from all these sports. Whereas I'm still trying to get the guy who has never done anything else, doing shrimp still. So the big thing though, and this is what like separates people. It isn't about where you are right now. Like when I started training, there were guys that like, again, I got pretty good pretty fast, but then there were guys that came after me that got better than I was. Granted, they weren't better than me, but they came up to speed really quick, and they were nipping at my heels in only a few months, where I had at some points had like a year or two in. And it was frustrating because I'm like, bro, I've been training for like almost a year and a half, 2 years, and this guy's been training for 4 months, and he's already like giving me a tough run for my money. But then, it doesn't matter, because we're going to keep training for a long period of time. People fall off, people quit, whatever. And you'll have your own like growth spurts and skill at different times. It just doesn't matter. You have to get away from this focus on with your training partners. It doesn't matter where they're at. It just doesn't. If you train with them and you have tough times rolling with them, you can look at that objectively and try to figure out like, what can I do better against this particular person? But you can't worry that they're doing better than you or whatever, because it doesn't matter. Because I mean, again, you're probably going to do better than some people at some other point. And you wouldn't think that it would be necessary for them to like be angry at you for it, right? It just is what it is. We're all in this race, and we take the lead at different times depending on what's going on. And so you have to lose this obsession. Again, it's humans, we compare ourselves, but you have to look at it objectively, the roles that you have with people, but you can't judge yourself against those people. It's a hard thing to do. You got to be logical about it. Can't be emotional, be like, I've been training for X amount of time, I should be better than this. You deserve nothing. None of us do. We train and we get it. And sometimes things work out better for us. Sometimes it doesn't. It just is what it is, but we deserve nothing. It's like when people like in business and stuff will like last year, like with the pandemic and stuff, people's business are closing, and it's like, it sucks. It's terrible, but like, it just is what it is. Right. And comparing ourselves to someone else, it just doesn't help. And so lose that. So again, stick with this. So your idea is to train consistently. Don't worry about as far as how well someone else is doing. If you roll with them and they beat you, think about it objectively. What could you have done better in that role? What could you do better to make your training better? And as far as your own training just in general, just think about what you could do to make your training better. Are you getting enough sleep at night, like 7-8 hours? Are you studying a little bit at home? Are you eating good food? Like, are you eating a fairly good diet? Are you drinking all the time, like alcohol? Are you drinking enough water? I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do to tweak your training that have nothing to do with actual training that'll make a massive difference. I mean, you put someone on a good diet and all of a sudden they go from being like having to take breaks to all of a sudden they can roll the full speed of the rounds the whole time, because their body's not being bogged down with junk food and everything else. So again, just an idea, a couple things to throw out at you. But again, you got to lose that idea as far as comparing, be focused on it objectively, and then just think about what you can do to always improve your training, depending on how far you want to get down into it.
All right, Chew. We got do a couple more.
Let's do a couple more. We'll wrap up.
I'll answer this one real fast, and I'll have you kind of look through a couple. Let me go here. Chewy, go ahead and go. You can scroll down a little bit and see what you find. So this is it's a me question, Eugene question. It's older grappler 54 having increasing problems with the fingers, saying non-RA, so no arthritis related, just any rehab ideas. So some simple things is just modifying your grips and not holding on for dear life. Like that's a basic question or a basic answer anybody can kind of give you is just modify your grips. I also there's some good like tendon glides, finger glide exercise I can show you. I'll maybe make a video. And so there's some specific things, movement. There's if we do a lot of gripping, sometimes those little bands with the fingers opening up the hands a little bit and working kind of the extensors can be nice and helpful. Even some people like using like rice bucket and doing some things in the rice bucket for rehab. But just making sure you have good kind of mobility, or you can warm up the fingers a little bit, and just modifying your gripping, I think, is key. But it just really depends on what exactly you're having problems with, like gripping or a certain movement, that kind of thing. What you got, Chew?
Let's see.
One more. We'll do one or two more. But anything like, honestly, like with rehab in general or mobility in general, you have to adequately warm up. People hate warming up. It's really important regardless.
All right. I'll get a couple real quick.
All right. Go for it.
Yes. I've rolled with a broken toe. So someone asked if I rolled with a broken toe. I've rolled with a broken big toe.
Big toe. Yeah. That's the main thing. Which toe is it?
I mean, dude, even a pinky toe, you hit that sucker, sucker hurts. And the thing is like I remember as a kid, I used to laugh at like some of the big football players. Like they're out with a broken toe. I'm like, broken toe. Yeah. You get one. It's like, it sucks.
Yeah, they suck. Like big toe. I mean, you ever think like if you hurt the big toe, I mean, the push off, the explosiveness, the balance. I mean, it's so, and it can be annoying. Like people get, turf toe, which is like a damage to like some of the ligaments there. And it's terrible. You can't push off at all.
Eric Calderon says that he competed in wrestling in high school and he has no desire to compete, but he has training partners that want him to compete. So you just got to let them know you don't want to compete. Again, you're going to have peer pressure, because the groups get together and they're like, hey, we're all competing. Compete with us, Eric. And they might see something in you. They might be like, dude, you're pretty good. You should compete with us. I would encourage you to experiment with the possible idea. I've had a lot of people over the years say, I'm not competing ever again, whatever. And then they compete and they're like, man, that was so much fun. I wish I would have done that more. So maybe give it like one shot at some point, if you ever get the itch. But otherwise, just tell them you're not going to compete. Simple as that. I mean, you got to draw your boundaries. And again, with people, anytime you draw boundaries, people will push on those boundaries. So you got to maintain them. You got to put the guards at the wall and say, no, I'm not doing this. I'm just letting you know. So, and
got any? One more?
1 second here.
Last one. I'll look through here.
What do people really mean when they say it's old BJJ? I take on board all the techniques my coaches teach, but sometimes I see certain techniques that work, but been told it's old. I don't know. There's old school jiu-jitsu, but like old school jiu-jitsu is basically like fundamental stuff that everybody does, that kind of thing. I don't know what old jiu-jitsu is.
Like basic techniques,
see, here's the thing. When people say old jiu-jitsu and new jiu-jitsu, I don't really pay attention to it because you can watch guys. Felipe Pina just recently did some old school jiu-jitsu, some basic jiu-jitsu at the Worlds and won. Hadra Gracie, I was talking about this earlier. He used an X choke, old school jiu-jitsu against everybody. Really, I mean, you can go watch Kron. Kron would compete and would use old jiu-jitsu. He knew how to do new school stuff, but did all the old school stuff and won. So you don't have to do anything because, again, it's not the techniques that are inherently powerful. It's the wielder of those techniques that's important. It's the difference, like why, any butthole on the internet can like watch one of our techniques and like in jiu-jitsu and they go, here's how to do an armbar. It doesn't mean he can do an armbar. Like maybe he knows how to do it, but he can't hit it in a full roll, or he can't hit it in a fight. He can like look like he knows what he's doing, but he can't actually use it in a fight. And when you're talking about using something in a live situation, it's not the technique, right? It's the wielder of the technique. It's the person who has developed the skill of that technique to use it. Because I can tell you right now, I've rolled with the guys who can do all the flippy, upside down, crazy new school stuff, no problem. I've rolled with guys that like use like Jiu-Jitsu 101, hasn't changed in 20 years, and they're deadly effective with it. So again, don't get too wrapped up into new school, old school techniques. Learn all of it, but understand that the person using those techniques, are what matters. The techniques are the weapons, but the weapons are only as powerful as the person wielding them.
And what are you good at as well? Like, I mean, it's, old school techniques sometimes, like Bernardo, I think has like his style of grappling maybe is more for older people. It's a little slower game. Right. So, I mean, I don't know if you mean by old. I don't know if it's old. So like closed guard or what have you, some of these new. I mean, I think there's benefits to all of that. I think you should be aware of it all in some capacity. So, all right, guys, let's mention the sponsors real fast.
Yeah. Then, so this is where that little number right now says 65 people. This is where it just starts dropping off dramatically.
Yeah.
Because you guys are like, no, they're talking about the sponsors.
That's right.
So real quick, guys. See, there goes 62. We're going down. We're going down. Where's it going to go? Where are you guys going to drop off now? Sometimes they miss out on fun stuff because a lot of times towards the end, Eugene and I, wherever we do the outros, all kinds of random stuff pops up. But what I was talking, there goes the 660. They're already leaving. So real quick, guys, if you guys want to check out Charlotte's Web, you can go to their website, charlottesweb.com/jiu-jitsu. One product I really liked recently. So I don't know what was going on with me. I was having some hell of a time sleeping. I don't know. It's not something that I've ever really dealt with. I don't know if you guys have dealt with insomnia before. That's not something I've ever dealt with. It's literally like one of the worst things ever. I'm used to getting like 7 hours to 8 hours of sleep, no problem. I've also, I talked about this. Anyway, I don't want to get to that. I sleep 7 to 8 hours straight. I don't have to get up for pee breaks. And I'm in like the middle of, I'm in my mid to late 30s. That's good. Now, recently, for whatever reason, the last few weeks, I've been dealing with some issues where some nights I don't sleep. I'll get an hour, maybe 2 hours of sleep, and it's brutally awful. It's awful. It's just terrible. I feel sick. And I took the other day I took a concoction together. Check this out. They've got these things called sleep gummies. They've got melatonin and CBD in them. And then I took the CBD sleep spray, which has got skullcap, valerian root, and CBD in it. I take those together. I'm talking about out cold for like 7-8 hours straight, like just dead to the world. It's amazing. So you can check out that or any of their other products at charlottesweb.com/jiu-jitsu. Also, big thanks to Matt at Epic Roll, and also any of you guys listening who ordered the limited edition Jiu-Jitsu rash guards. I want to thank you guys because we had a great sale. Everything went great, and I appreciate you guys for being a part of it. I'm also going to send everyone that bought something. I'm going to send you a little gift here soon as a special thank you. But again, it went great, and I appreciate you guys being a part of it. Again, if you guys want to check out Matt's website, if you're in the mood for, or in the not the mood, but if you have the desire to get some new gear or t-shirts or apparel for jiu-jitsu, check out some of his stuff. I really like his designs. And if you've ever watched any of my videos where sometimes I have like a kind of a cool jiu-jitsu related shirt on, if it's not mine, it's probably his. And so you can go on his website. He has a lot of cool designs. And again, he has a lot of good gear. Basically his shorts are now my go-to training shorts. I love the non-Velcro. I love how comfortable they are, opposed to the Velcro that most shorts have. It's so much more comfortable. Again, you can check that out at epicrollbjj.com, and the promo code is Jiu-Jitsu. You save 15% on the order. Also, thanks to our sponsor, Manscaped. Manscaped is the premier men's below-the-belt grooming company. They also have a lot of other products that you can use above the belt. I use this. So a lot of you guys ask me what I use to like work on my beard. Well, I don't really do any oils or anything, but I use their trimmer to trim my beard and trim anywhere else that needs to be trimmed. You know what I'm talking about, fellas. But it's a nice trimmer. And so they originally sent us the trimmer right here, plus all the other stuff. And again, when they sent it to us originally, I wasn't expecting much from it. And I was like, we'll try it out. I actually really like it. It's a really cool, high quality piece of equipment, and it's waterproof. It's got a light on it, and that little light, while it doesn't seem like a big deal, especially when you're downstairs doing some trimming, it's helpful to get all the little hairs out of there. I'll leave it at that. Again, I was actually kind of like, that's actually handy. But they've also got a lot of good colognes, razors, and all kinds of other like products and stuff, and everything smells amazing. Everything appears to be high quality, at least to me. So you can check their stuff out by going to manscaped.com. The promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off and free shipping on the order. Also, as I've mentioned earlier on the podcast, if you guys want to get 2 free ebooks related to jiu-jitsu, I have a ebook that's based upon a game plan guide. It's basically what I use in my game plan. I'll show you what I use in competitions, and it'll also line up if you have a competition or if you just want to understand your game better. It'll line up how to put together a game plan and basically just give you some categories to fill in. Again, you can get that at jiu-jitsu.net/join, JOIN. And along with that, I give another ebook that's on drilling. So if you want to learn how to actually drill techniques and how to use them from basically the point of learning the technique versus actually using it against someone at the same skill level, I'll teach you how to do that in that ebook. And again, that's at the website jiu-jitsu.net/join. And also you'll get subscribed to my daily email newsletter, which again, you can unsubscribe from at any point. But those are the people, like the daily email newsletters, where they get first crack at everything. Like I was talking about at the beginning about goals. We're talking about the 3 camps coming up.
Yeah.
The first camp we did sold in less than 24 hours to the email people only. That's whoever who's in my email, you get first crack. And also, if you guys ever want to get a hold of me, that's usually the best place. You can send a reply back to the emails, and a lot of times I'll get back to you if I get a reply back to one of my emails. And last but not least, guys, earlier today when we were doing this podcast, we tried something out. So we have a Patreon related to the podcast, which is at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. By joining it, you'll get access to a ton of different content related to the podcast extras, podcast episodes that we've never released, talks with the different guests that we've had on the podcast for years, again, that we've never released. You can get access to all that. And we've also started something now where we do something similar to this, where we're live. We don't do these very often on YouTube, but where we're live and we're talking in the back end. And again, it's a way for a handful of people to just chat with us. We call it the green room, where basically it's a chance before our podcast to just hang out with us, and you can get access to that by going to jiu-jitsu. I keep saying jiu-jitsu. The patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast, and so you can check that out. So we were live. Thank you guys for sticking around, all 52 of you. We only lost a few. That's surprising. Usually the drop off is much more pronounced. So So go back real quick. Go back to is there people still there?
What's that?
Is there people still there in the comments? Let's see what the comments say.
Let's see what the comments say. They're saying thank you. Some of them are saying thank you.
So
are you coming up with a new t-shirt anytime?
No new t-shirts. We'll probably come up with like a hoodie or something, and we'll probably have another batch of gis coming out sometime probably towards my birthday around March. So we'll let you guys know more about that coming up soon.
And then Kyle said, when we were talking about it, like, now I'm feeling pressured to stay. Good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, buddy.
Thank you for sticking around.
Yeah, thanks, dude. Yeah, that's it. Talk to you guys next time. Appreciate you.
So that was fun. Thank you guys for joining us live. And if you guys don't already listen to the podcast, I know we're on YouTube right now. On the podcast is normally we have a podcast channel. You can follow that if you want to on YouTube, which you should if you want to, if you enjoyed this. And if not, we're on every podcast platform everywhere. And we come out on Mondays. So Monday is when the podcast comes out. Eugene releases it pretty early. Yep. So if you're getting ready to go to work and you want to check us out, you can check us out there. Today's podcast is actually going to be a long one. Most of the time they're about an hour, or give or take. This one's like 2 hours, a long one.
Yeah, buddy.
But again, welcome to the new year. Hope you guys are doing really well. And I look forward to growing with you guys in 2022.